All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Gridiron Expert, our annual Tuesday night live stream, 7 o'clock Central Time. It's like a tradition unlike any other, right here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. We're so glad you guys could join us today for what's going to be a great show. Going to be a great show tonight. We're going to be taking all your questions and comments in the chat. Going to get to all those. And we're going to take your calls as well. We're going to take your calls as we get ready for week 3 of college football. A week that, honestly, is pretty lackluster. It's not going to be that great of a week. But college football is college football. You know, I think we'll happily take a lackluster week over nothing at all, right? And we still got some intriguing games, for sure. Still got a couple, and we'll touch on those throughout the night. But we got a lot to cover, no doubt about it. We got a lot to cover with you guys. Got a lot to cover what's on our mind. Recapping week 2, previewing week 3, taking a look at really only one team that could possibly be on upset alert this weekend. That's kind of the crazy thing is entering this week, a lot of teams are like massive favorites. Like they are like, massive double-digit favorites. And when we looked at those, they're like, they're not going to be upsets, right? Like Alabama's not going to lose to USF. Even though they travel on the road for a non-conference game for once, they're not going to lose to USF. There's a handful of other teams out there that are major heavy 30-point, 25-point favorites, and they're Florida State, and they're not losing to Boston College, it's like things like that. So a lot of heavy favorites out there, but I will say a handful of those could result in upsets. Maybe not the Florida State, Alabama ones, but there are going to be some other ones out there where typically it's the weeks where you don't think it's going to be a big weekend. It's a week where you think it's a lackluster weekend that provides the most entertaining games, the most big upsets that shake up a conference, shake up the national, standing. So a lot to cover, a lot to look over there. And again, as we all know, you can never assume anything in college football. You can never overlook a team because anything can happen on any given Saturday. Want to take a look here. Give a shout out to Robert. Good to see you, Robert. It's been a while. Nice to have you here. DM, my man DM. Nice to have you. You are, I think, the only one that's answered the question. And so I like it. Neil Diamond. So a little, I'll be honest with you. I don't know too many of his songs. I know a handful. Obviously, Sweet Caroline. That's number one, right? I mean, you think of Neil Diamond's what you think of. Almost any sporting event you go to, the crowd can get into that song when they play it over the loudspeakers. So that's a fun one. So I like it. I've never seen him in concert, but have always been a fan of him. Always been admired him. So I appreciate you answering that question, DM. Thank you for being here. The reason I asked that question was just to get a little something going in the chat. So hopefully people will come in and answer, get it going before we started the stream. I went to a concert this last weekend, went and saw Tenacious D. I don't know if anybody knows who they are. The band led by none other than Jack Black, the great Jack Black. And so I drove about 4.5 hours to Nashville and had to go watch Tenacious D in concert. It was a fantastic venue, a fantastic concert, probably the best concert I have seen live, without a doubt. And, it was something else. It was something else. So I wanted to pick your brain on that, something non-football related. But DM, good to see you. Robert, good to see you. Eddie Rose, good to see you. Don't worry, Eddie. We will talk plenty about Mizzou. Don't worry. I know you were frustrated with that performance against Middle Tennessee, so we definitely will be talking about that. C. Glassman, 81, good to see you. Has the Michigan logo. I can see the Notre Dame, though. It says Go Irish logo. That his profile picture is split. But I like the picture, Michigan and Notre Dame. Don't know why you have both there, though. They're pretty big rivals. Flo, good to see you. John Paul Bacon, good to see you. Mr. R1, good to see you there. Do I think Notre Dame will beat Ohio State? We'll get to that here shortly. Clement Akufo, good to see you. Let's see who else we got here. Lance, 44. Yes, let's get paid this week. Trust me, you will. You definitely will. Doggy, good to see you. Ricket Picks. And everybody else that may or may not join the stream later tonight. We're glad you guys could be here. As always, continue to like, continue to comment, continue to subscribe. Check out everything down in the description. Everything that's kind of ticking across there. We got like a little ESPN ticker down at the bottom. Who was it that just said? I think it was, where'd he go? I missed him. Someone said, let's get paid. He deleted us. Yeah, Lance. Lance was like, let's get paid. You'll get paid with those expert picks, and we're getting very close to actually hitting our goal of 100 expert pick subscriptions. And remember, if we do that, we sit on this live stream for 24 full hours, a full day of live streams right here on the channel. And we'll make sure to do that on like a Friday night, entering a Saturday. So you'll be able to watch football with us and get our live reactions. But we do that if we can get to that, reach our goal. So you win money with us. You get a 20. It's a win-win for everybody, honestly. So check out the expert picks. Went 8-2 last week against the spread. 5-1 this season in our best bet section. So we are really killing it there. And we'd love for you guys to be a part of that and take advantage of that. So good to see everybody with you guys tonight. South Tex, nice to have you here. Eugene Murphy, good to see you as well. Let's get into some of your questions and comments, and then we'll open up the phone lines. That's what we're going to do. So I wanted, because you already have some great stuff to bring to the table. We'll just kind of go down the road real quick. Eddie, real quick, thoughts on Mizzou right now? You are done with Drinkwitz. He's freaking stubborn and doesn't play his talented players. I'm done with him. I really miss Gary, of course, referring to Gary Pinkel. I was never a fan of Eli Drinkwitz. I was never really a big fan of the hire. He has, I guess the best word I could use for Eli Drinkwitz is he's treading water, right? Like he is like, coaches, you start at the bottom and you want to trend up an upward trajectory. Well, he's just kind of plateaued. He hasn't done anything spectacular. He's gotten Missouri to some bowl games. Hasn't done anything there, though. I mean, when you go back and look, I mean, hasn't had a winning season, hasn't gone above 6 wins. Go 6-6, lose your bowl game, or have a losing season. I think what do you go 5-5 in that first year, the COVID year? He's just not that great of a coach. And this was the year that Missouri, and they're still 2-0. We're acting like Missouri lost to Middle Tennessee. They didn't. But it was obviously a very lackluster performance, and one that obviously you should be concerned about and does not look good heading into a big game this weekend against Kansas State, a Kansas State team that won the Big 12 last year and is loaded with talent once again. I agree. The offense is the main issue, right? The defense really isn't that bad, but the defense can only do so much too if the offense continues to sputter. Like if the offense continues to go 3 and out or commits turnovers or just can't move the ball, and you put your defense back out there a lot quicker with no breaks, they're going to get tired. Or if you turn the ball over and the defense starts trying to play defense inside the red zone, they're probably going to allow a touchdown or at least a field goal. And that's not really their fault. It's on the offense. So I agree. Missouri's struggles, and we knew that coming into the year, was the offense, was the questions at quarterback. Who was it going to be? Was it going to be Brady Cook? Was it going to be Sam Horn? Was it going to be Garcia? We didn't know. And they've kind of been riding with Cook like they did last year, and it really hasn't panned out for them. So this week will be very telling, Eddie. Obviously, does the offense take a step forward? They have to if they want to beat Kansas State. If you play like they did against Middle Tennessee, they will get steamrolled by Kansas State, just like they did last year in Manhattan, because the Wildcats, Chris Kleiman, have one of the best defenses in the country, not just in the Big 12, but in the country. And so Missouri simply won't stand a chance if they can't fix their offense. So I'm not impressed with them. I know you're not impressed with them, Eddie. I hate that, genuinely. The season's not over or anything if they lose to Kansas State, by no means. But I think the high expectations where people thought that Missouri could go win 8-9 games this year, that is not looking very feasible, not with a difficult schedule coming up with Kansas State. Then you've got LSU. Then, of course, later on, you've got Georgia and Tennessee. Obviously, your SEC opponents. South Carolina looks very winnable. Vanderbilt looks certainly very winnable. But, right now I'm looking at least 3 losses coming up with Kansas State, LSU, and Tennessee, and Georgia for that matter. So I would say 4 possibly losses coming up unless they fix something and fix it very quickly. So great question. Hang in there. Like I said, this week we'll answer. Even if they lose but look very good in the loss, I think that should give you a lot of excitement, a lot of hope and optimism heading into conference play. So a lot of stuff to kind of, keep in mind as we go through. R1, do I think Notre Dame will beat Ohio State? We'll talk about that game a lot next week. Obviously, the week 4 is going to be absolutely phenomenal. It's kind of like a 1 week on, 1 week off type of thing this year. Like week 1 was okay. Had some decent games. Wasn't like I'd like a C. I give like a C. Week 2 was like an A plus. Week 3, like a D. It's not very good. And then week 4 is unbelievable. You got Bama and A&M. You got Arkansas and LSU. You've got Notre Dame and Ohio State. You've got Iowa and Penn State, the whiteout game in Happy Valley. And that's just naming a couple of them. I think we mentioned Clemson, Florida State, Oregon, and Colorado play next week. That game will be at 2:30 Central Time. So we've got some massive, massive games on deck next week as we really start to enter conference play, for a lot of these programs. So week 4 is going to be unbelievable. Now, I was looking at the schedule. There is a possibility that we have potentially 8 ranked versus ranked matchups in week 4. So it's like sacrificing this week for the big payoff next week. This week, no ranked versus ranked matchups. Next week, possibly 8. And a good amount of those coming in the Pac-12. Oregon, Colorado is going to be one. I believe Washington State plays Oregon State. I think Utah plays UCLA. I think they play next week. I don't have the schedule in front of me. I have to look at it. But there's a potential for a lot of ranked versus ranked matchups. It's going to drastically shape up the rankings, drastically shake up the conference races, and it's going to drastically shape up the playoff race as well. So next week's going to be unbelievable. Notre Dame, Ohio State, one of those massive games that have playoff implications. And right now, yeah, I do. I definitely think Notre Dame will beat Ohio State. I really do, because Ohio State has not looked good, while Notre Dame has looked absolutely phenomenal. No doubt about it. Let's see. Clement, good to see you, my guy. Happy to have you here. Is Texas finally back after beating Alabama? I guess we'll just make that the main question. Yeah, I think they are, at least for this year. I hate saying that too, because it always comes back to bite us. But I really do, Clement. I think Texas, and we'll actually leave that up there. I think it is. I think they are back. If you look at the schedule for Texas, and I'll pull that up right now, but if you look at the schedule for Texas going forward, it is very, very favorable, to the point where we look, I put it this way. Our predictions back in the preseason, we had Texas going 10-2, losing to Alabama, and then losing one conference game. Right now, they've already beat Alabama. They're already exceeding our expectations. So if you take that away, we would have had them going 11-1, meaning that a win in the Big 12 championship over whoever it may be would send them to the college football playoff. You look at what's on deck. Wyoming, Baylor, an 0-2 Baylor that might still be without Blake Shapen when Texas plays them. Kansas, Oklahoma, who hasn't looked all that impressive. Houston, BYU, they get to host Kansas State. I mean, they really have a really favorable schedule down the stretch. They do go on the road to TCU, but the Horned Frogs haven't looked all that impressive. They go on the road to Houston, a Houston team that just lost to Rice. They host Kansas. They play Oklahoma and Dallas. They host Texas Tech. They host Kansas State. Some of the bigger games left on their schedule are at home for Longhorns, which is huge for them. So, and the beauty for this for Texas too is if they're going to lose, they need to lose early. Unfortunately for them, the month of November is when they play Kansas State, TCU, Iowa State, and Texas Tech. And there's a good possibility a loss could come in there if they're going to lose a game. You want to lose earlier than later. But Texas still, with that win over Alabama, winning by 10 points, a double-digit victory, that playing a huge role, they have room for error. They can afford a loss. And as long as they win the Big 12, they're going to make the playoffs. So right now, I'd say, yeah, don't get too high on them. You need to make sure Texas doesn't, falter. It would be classic Texas to beat Alabama, steamroll Wyoming, and then next week go on the road to Baylor, who might be like 1-2, and lose. That would be classic Texas. But I just don't think that's going to be them anymore. I think that win against Alabama turned a corner for not just Steve Sarkisian and this team, but this program as a whole that really hasn't been the same since they lost to Alabama back in that 2009 national championship game. So it's kind of crazy to think about that one game kind of derailed Texas and gave Alabama the boost they needed. This could be the reverse now. 14 years later, almost 15 years later, Texas gets the win over Alabama. Maybe Alabama starts to decline while Texas is back on the rise. I think that's kind of what happened last week. Very, very good question. Very good question. Let's see. Who else we got in here? John Paul Bacon, good to see you. We're all doing well, man. At least I'm doing well. I don't know how everybody else is doing, but it's good to have you here. South Texas, good to have you here. Congrats on the big win over San Diego State. UCLA looking phenomenal. They are in our top 25, and I think the AP top 25 as well, so that's good. That's really good. Let's see here. DM, good question here. My prediction, BYU and Arkansas, both 2-0, playing in Fayetteville. I actually will be in attendance for that game, believe it or not. We'll be in Fayetteville this Saturday for BYU and Arkansas. So if anybody's in the area, hit me up. We'll be around. I guess I can tell you now, DM, that we're putting that video out tomorrow. We are putting BYU and Arkansas out tomorrow right here on the channel. That is one of our 3 mystery games. So I guess since the people at the live stream, you get first come, first serve. You get the sneak peek. We will be predicting BYU and Arkansas right here on the channel tomorrow, a full video dedicated to that game. And it's going to be a good one. All I can say is it's going to be a good one. It's going to be a great measuring stick for both programs because, BYU hasn't looked good through 2 games. They really haven't. But Arkansas hasn't either. Neither team has great push up front on the offensive line. Neither team is running the ball extremely well. So Arkansas definitely owns the quarterback edge with KJ Jefferson. They definitely own the passing edge. Defensively, BYU has improved drastically. Arkansas looks like they've improved drastically too, but they've only played Western Carolina and Kent State. So you really can't take too much away from that. So this game, I think, has the potential to be a little bit closer than people think. Arkansas won by 17 last year in Provo, but both teams are drastically different than the ones that met last year. Rocket Sanders, the running back for Arkansas, will not be playing in this game. For the second straight week, he will be sitting out, probably hoping to save him for next week's conference opener against LSU. But it's going to be a close, physical game that I think will surprise a lot of people. I think a lot of people might think Arkansas goes in there and just steamrolls them, and I'm not sure I'm willing to take that. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm willing to predict that that's going to happen. So we'll have our full analysis and prediction tomorrow, but that's an underrated game, BYU and Arkansas. It's an underrated game on Saturday night, no doubt about it. And like I said, if anybody's around, hit us up. We will be there. College football guy, good to see you. Good to see you. Robert was saying something. Let's see. I think he was getting into an argument over on Uncle Lou's channel or something. Let's see. Hey, there you go. See, Glassman got it. He changed he changed his logo back, his profile picture from the Michigan Notre Dame split to the Notre Dame, the leprechaun. I like it. Good take. Let's see. We're about to open the phone lines here shortly. I wanted to make sure we got a chance to hit as many people as we could in the chat before we really got going. Josh Swinton, good to see you. Do I think TCU climbs back into the Big 12 championship with a win against Houston and SMU? Let's just take a look at their schedule real quick, Josh. How's that sound? They're 1-1. They got beat by Colorado. We know that. Well, SMU, is not a conference game, so that's not going to really do them any good. Houston's obviously the bigger game of the two because they are now a member of the Big 12. I'm not going to be prepared to say they jump back into the Big 12 championship conversation. But honestly, the Big 12 right now is really wide open. I mean, Texas is number one, no doubt about it. But after that, who's your number two? You can make the argument it's Oklahoma. But they haven't looked all that impressive, although I do think they continue to improve over the year. Texas Tech was supposed to be really good. They're 0-2. Granted, both losses were in non-conference, so Texas Tech could still get in to the Big 12 championship. Their hopes of winning the conference are not out of the question. Baylor's 0-2. They look just about done for. They're going to, should be, I think it was like Long Island this week, and then they're probably going to lose to Texas. And once they're 1-3, they'll be done. Iowa State's out of the picture. West Virginia's out of the picture. Houston's out of the picture. Cincinnati had a great start at 2-0. They're out of the picture. BYU's out of the picture. None of those teams to me are going to contend for a Big 12 championship spot. They look okay right now. A lot of teams that still are undefeated, and no one's played a conference game. But as the year wears on, you're gonna start separating the contenders from the pretenders. And I think a lot of the Big 12 teams right now are legitimate pretenders. TCU, I think, actually might be one of them. I just don't know if they have what it takes to run the table. Or just kind of go on a tear. They still have to go on the road to Kansas State, on the road to Texas Tech. They get to host Texas, which is great, but Texas is looking really, really good. If you can win in Tuscaloosa, you can definitely win in Fort Worth. They have to go on the road to Oklahoma. So a lot of tough games coming up. And Houston, SMU, those are no easy games either. So would not be solely sold on TCU right now. At least not right now. Stephen Cuffey, good to see you. Mike Myrick, good to see you. Go Noles, baby. Team's looking good, looking real good. And I think you're in for another massive victory this week against Boston College. I think it's going to be a pretty big and decisive victory. Let's see who else we got on here. I think that's about it. We'll open up our phone lines here shortly. I appreciate all of you guys here in the chat. As Clement said, we've got a lot of people on, 33 people on. We appreciate that. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. We're trying to get to 12,000, big number, 12,000 subs by the end of September. I genuinely believe we can do that. So hit that subscribe button, share the channel, spread the word, and more than anything, hit that like button. Hit that like button. As Clement said, we've got 30 watching, only 13 likes. Let's get it up. Help the GE Nation out. Clement, we appreciate you, my guy. I really do. Thank you so much for that. And, let's keep building. Let's keep building. Keep moving. This is how we grow. This is how we boost our analytics. But with that, let's go ahead and open up our phone lines. We'll take calls for a while tonight. Kind of did our brief 20-minute introduction like we typically do. And we'll take a handful of calls, try to keep it within 5-6 minutes per call so we can get through as many people as possible tonight. And then we'll wrap things up by coming back to the chat and answering some of your questions and comments like we always do. So, you know the drill here at the Gridiron Expert. We got a good routine. I don't know if I'd change it. Dalton, Rowdy Bush, what's going on, man? Good to see you. Big Vols fan. Appreciate you and all your support. Got a big game. Big game coming up. We might be getting a caller right now. I don't know. We'll touch more on Tennessee and Florida here shortly. But let's get to this caller if it is someone actually calling in. Let's see who we got here. You are on the Gridiron Expert. Who's with us?
Barbara.
Who is it?
Barbara, RBERT.
Hey, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm going. How about yourself?
Hey, we're doing good. Doing good. Appreciate the phone call.
Yeah, no problem. Do you think Alabama would win the table, like go undefeated the regular season, and then win the SEC championship?
It's a pretty tall task. They didn't look very good against Texas, but we have seen this happen before, right? Where Alabama loses early and then can still run the table. If there's any coach out there that's going to make some big adjustments and right the ship, it is Nick Saban. The problem for Alabama is the schedule's tough, right? They've got Ole Miss next week. That's not going to be easy. They've got to still host LSU. That's not going to be easy. And even if Alabama ran the rest of the way and was 11-1 by season's end, they most likely have a date against Georgia in the SEC championship, and they're going to have to win that too. Like, Alabama cannot lose another game, whether it's in the regular season or in the conference championship, if they want to make the playoffs. So my gut says they fall short. My gut says they lose at least one more, maybe two more. But like I said, if anybody can get them there, it's Nick Saban.
What do you think about the AP poll?
Not the biggest fan per usual. I think I'll pull it up real quick. I think they made a handful of mistakes with their decisions this week. I mean, honestly, I'm not upset really with most of the top 10. Definitely the top 5. I agree with most of the top 5, especially the top 4. Texas at 4, Florida State at 3. Fully agree with that. I feel like Alabama probably should have dropped a little bit more. Keeping Alabama in the top 10, I feel like was a little bit of a stretch. I think they probably should have dropped down to like 12th or 13th. Like we had them in our rankings. I'm looking through the rest of it here. Iowa being at 25, they should be a little bit higher. They shouldn't have dropped out to begin with. North Carolina probably should be a little bit lower. This wasn't their worst job. I'll give them that. Oregon, I think, is a top 10 team. I think Oregon being at 13th is a sham, in my opinion. But this wasn't their worst set in the world. But I'm telling you, by the end of week 4, after all those ranked versus ranked matchups we have next week, that's when I think they're going to really start to screw things up, and we'll have a lot more disagreements.
All right. What do you think is going to be the most underweight game for this week?
I think the most underrated game, it really might be, and we mentioned it in our video today, it might be Minnesota and North Carolina, and I see a lot of people in the chat talking about that right now. This is a game that I think isn't really on everybody's radar, but it's a great clash of styles. Minnesota's defense, North Carolina's offense. Neither team has looked all that great this year. I mean, North Carolina looked great in week 1, but really didn't look great last week against App State. Minnesota has just looked average the last 2 weeks, yet they're still 2-0. So it's a big game for both. And, I think that's probably a game that's probably flying under the radar for sure.
Yeah, because the past few years we're seeing offense versus defense, the best of best, and then we see mostly offense win the games.
Right. Yes, I feel what you're saying for sure.
But that's all for me. So have a great night.
All right, man. We appreciate the call. You too. Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Appreciate the call. Great stuff. Great questions. He kind of reminds me of our guy Hunter, big Clemson fan. He comes in. He knows what he's ready to say. He knows what he wants to talk about. And good stuff. Good stuff. I appreciate that. I think, did we just get someone just signed, not Expert Picks, but it was Josh. Yeah, there you go. Josh Swinton just joined the website. So we appreciate you, Josh. Thank you for signing up over on the gridironexpert.com, home of those expert picks as well. Every sale there gets us one step closer to our goal and one step closer to that 24-hour live stream. So everybody keep that in mind. Whether you want to sign up for those or spread the word to a friend. Beat out over 80% of the national handicappers each of the last 5 years. So we're looking to continue that role. I see a lot of guys talking about that Minnesota-North Carolina game. And, we picked North Carolina today in our week 3 prediction video. So if you haven't watched that, it's already out on the channel. Go check it out. But we talked about that clash of style. If you look at Minnesota, though, they just haven't been great. I mean, they got very, very lucky to beat Nebraska in week 1. They benefited from the just failures of Jeff Sims. So, Minnesota really shouldn't have won that game, if we're being completely honest. But they found a way. Against Eastern Michigan, we knew that was going to be a win. They didn't really look all that great in that win, but still got it. Win's a win. No complaints there. But then you look at North Carolina, it was like everybody was kind of high on them, including myself. They beat South Carolina in dominating fashion. It's like, whoa, they turned a corner. The defense is looking great. And then they have to go to double overtime against App State last week. It's like, which team's going to show up? I think that's an underrated game that's going to kind of get overshadowed this weekend. I think, again, no ranked versus ranked matchups, but we are sleeping on this game out in Chapel Hill. I think maybe arguably the best game, one of the best games, is what's going to happen down in Gainesville when Tennessee takes on Florida, an SEC matchup earlier in the year. Big-time rivalry game as Tennessee's looking to get their first win at Florida since 2003. So that's pretty crazy. 20 years since they've won at the home of the Gators. So that's going to be an interesting game as well. Probably the top night game, you could argue. And then game day is going to Colorado State and Colorado. And obviously they're going because of the Deion hype, right? They're going because of what Deion Sanders has done over these last 2 weeks, beating TCU, beating Nebraska, doing the Nebraska game in dominating fashion. They're going to be in Boulder for the first time since 1996. So that's kind of exciting. That's pretty exciting. Let's see here. Mark, TR, good to see you. Nice to have you here tonight, man. Good to see you. Go Canes, by the way. Your Hurricanes are looking great. Looking really, really good. This could be a special year from them, Mark. No doubt. Let's see. Anthony, great point on that. Colorado, and then we're going to put the phone number up. Colorado State and Wyoming can do the funniest thing this weekend, and they could, right? Can you imagine? We said it. We said week 3, it looks like luster, but this could be the weekend where you see possibly tons of upsets. Possibly. And if they are, if upsets happen, they are going to be massive. And if Colorado State were to beat Colorado and Wyoming were to beat Texas, it would just, I think people would freak out because Texas and Colorado are 2 of the teams in the country right now. They're getting the most hype. And it would be hilarious, honestly, if they went, if those 2 teams that are far inferior to Texas and Colorado pulled off the massive over 20-point underdogs. It'd be insane. It'd be insane. So, hey, but again, you never know. In the world of college football, man, you never know. Cannot take a single game, cannot take a single opponent for granted. Yeah, I love that comment. And Anthony, good to see you, my guy. Thanks for being here. All right, let me pull up our call-in number tonight, 870-586-6625. And as we mentioned, we'll always go through the chat sporadically, and definitely that's how we always end the show. So if we don't get to your question or your comment in the chat immediately, don't worry, we'll get there. Stick around. We're going to answer them. Don't worry. While we're waiting on whoever our next caller may be, I think may have been Josh, may have been Anthony. I don't know who it was, but someone mentioned the upset alert. Who's on upset alert this weekend, which we do here on our live streams. And, I'll tell you right now, I mentioned at the beginning of the show, there are not many games. Like there are a lot of there are a lot of teams that are like 20-point underdogs, 20-point, 30-point underdogs, right? But I'm not going to say they're on upset alert where they could win the game outright. They might cover, but I'm not going to say they're going to win the game outright. And we'll leave you in suspense. We'll come back and tell you who that one team is that could pull off the massive upset. But first, we're going to take this phone call that just went away. We just missed it. They must have hung up. I don't know who it was. Give us a call back. We were going to take it. But again, there's a lot. I see. Who was it? C. Glassman down there. Is Notre Dame losing to Central Michigan? Absolutely not. No, they're not. They're almost 35-point favorites, I think, at this point. You know what I like about this right now is Central Michigan has one of the worst secondaries in the country. This is a great stat padding opportunity for Sam Hartman to go out against Central Michigan and maybe in one half, maybe 3 quarters, 2.5 quarters, go out there and just torch the Chippewas defense. Stat pad, win by 50. I mean, no, they're not losing to Central Michigan. It's going to be pretty ugly. All right, let's take this phone call real quick, and then we'll come back to Upset Alert. Let's see here. All right, you were on the Gridiron Expert. Who's with us?
Josh Wayne.
I'm sorry, who was that?
Josh Wayne.
Hey, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm good. Josh Swinton.
Yeah, what's up, Josh?
Good.
How you doing, man? We appreciate the phone call. What's on your mind tonight?
So, do you think that Florida State has a good chance to win the college football playoff?
I think they have just as good a chance as some of the other elite teams in the country right now. I mean, they have every piece necessary to go on and win it. They've got the schedule, they've got the talent, they've got the defense is honestly more than anything. So yeah, they're looking really good for sure. He's got us. Hey, Josh, you got an echo, man. We're going to let you go, buddy. I appreciate it. We're going to let him go. Josh, I know if you're listening, man, you had our stream going, and we were calling you. We couldn't really hear you all that well. Then we had the echo, and it wasn't going to be great. But we appreciate the call in. Give us a call back later when there's no echo on your end. But we appreciate the call. Florida State going to be in great shape. Yeah, Mitch, give us a call, man. Give us a call. Yeah, you can definitely call in for sure. So yeah, there we go. Yeah, phone lines are still open, 870-586-6624. No worries, Josh. We appreciate the call in, man. We appreciate the support. Looking very good. Let's see here. Anthony says Florida. Now remember what classifies as an upset on Upset Alert, right? It's got to be a team that's a double-digit underdog that we think could win the game outright. Florida is only a 6.5-7-point underdog right now. They're not in a bad spot. And we'll get more to that in a second. Let's get this phone call in here. Phone lines starting to blow up, which is good. All right. You were on the Gridiron Expert. Who's with us?
Hey, it's Danny, South Texas.
Hey, what's going on, Danny? How you doing, man?
Hey, man, I'm doing great. I was actually at the Cal versus Auburn game, so I was just wondering if you stayed up for that. It was probably one of the most frustrating games I've ever watched. Did you end up catching that game?
I watched the entire thing, man, and I would have to agree with you. It was like one of those things where it was the most frustrating. It was fun to watch, but it was extremely frustrating.
Oh yeah, definitely. You know, Cal's been like my second team, and I just couldn't believe how they blew that game. 3 missed field goals. Couldn't decide who to play at quarterback. Jade not getting injured. I really don't think Auburn looked very good at all, and I think Cal really blew a chance to get a big win at home.
You hit the nail on the head, man. California should have won that game. I mean, if you watched it from start to finish, and I know you did, I know probably a lot of guys out there did, they looked like the better team. And even once they lost Ott, they would still look like the better team, you know? They finally have themselves a bit of a quarterback. Jake Spavital's offense is looking really good. I think they're kind of ahead of schedule when it comes to that right now. It was the field goals, man. I mean, so the special teams is what cost Cal. I mean, just so many missed opportunities to put that game away. I mean, it was really, really frustrating to watch. But I agree with you. I mean, if you're an Auburn fan, you probably should be a little bit concerned because I mean, Cal's not a bad team by any means, but I think this was a game that many people thought Auburn was going to go in and steamroll Cal, and that was not the case.
Yeah, definitely, and I think it's just sort of just speaking to just how people have been sleeping on the Pac-12 just because of years in past, you know. But this year, I think that it's like you said, best conference top to bottom. You know, going off that the Wazoo game, that was another big game that a lot of people were
sleeping on the Pac-12. So what do you think? My question is, do you think that the Pac-12 has a good shot of getting a team in, or is the Pac-12 going to beat up on each other and take each other out of the playoff spot like it seems like they always do?
Yeah, that's a really, really unfortunate thing, right? Like, this is such a good conference. I think there's like 8 teams in the AP poll right now. I mean, it's first off, I'll say it's a shame that this conference is disbanding. I mean, last year of existence, and they're really going out with a bang. So that's something. But my fear is that they're going to beat up on each other. I mean, all the top dogs because here's the thing: like, Colorado looks good. They're not making the college football playoff. It's just not going to happen. But they have the talent to affect who could. If they pull off an upset in these next 2 weeks, either against Oregon or USC, if they somehow did, that changes everything. Because if they beat Oregon and then Oregon beats USC, who beats Washington, who beats someone, they're all, like I said, all going to beat up on each other. The beauty of this right now, though, is that a one-loss Pac-12 champion will get in. In recent years, you could make the argument they didn't deserve to because the strength of schedule wasn't there. But the strength of schedule for whoever is Pac-12 champion will have been there. Utah's non-conference has been very tough. Washington has a road game against Michigan State. Colorado has a very good non-conference slate. Oregon has a win over Texas Tech. And then obviously everybody within their conference. So the strength of schedule is going to be a great factor for them in terms of boosting their resume. To answer your question, I do think this is the year they finally get in, just because there's so much talent there. You've got, in recent years, it was like, okay, maybe it was USC and Oregon, that was it. But I think you've got 4 legitimate teams that can make the playoff in the Pac-12 with USC, Oregon, Washington, and Utah, once Utah gets Cam Rising back. So 4 teams that have a shot. Surely one of them is bound to run the table and go undefeated or one loss and have a shot to get in.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I would love to see a team. Hopefully my Bruins can make it in, but if not, I would still love to see maybe someone like Oregon State make it in their last year. But anyway, just have one more thing. We were talking about upset alerts for the next week. I don't know if you already mentioned this one because I joined a little late, but what do you think about Mississippi State versus LSU? Do you think that could be a trap game for the Tigers? Yeah,
significantly. With that is like right on the fringe of a double-digit spread, depending on 9-10 points right now. But yeah, it's a tough spot because like Mississippi State didn't look good last week against Arizona, another team out of the Pac-12 that I think is kind of underrated. Mississippi State should not have won that game if you go back and look. They were severely outgained. They just benefited from 5 Arizona turnovers. And 5 Arizona turnovers that Mississippi State really didn't convert much off of. So, but on the flip side, Starkville is not an easy place to play. The passing attack can definitely exploit the LSU secondary. Will Rogers is so good in the SEC, one of the best quarterbacks in the conference. So, yeah, it's one of those things that if LSU's not up to the task, this game has the potential to be really, really close. And I know it was last year. I know a lot has changed since last year. But if you remember, Mississippi State had a really good start in Death Valley. They were beating LSU like, I don't know, it was 14-3, 14-6 late in the first half, early in the second half. And then LSU finally woke up and pulled away. Like, a lot of those guys are still back for Mississippi State. So to the point where like they can get off to a strong start. This is a game that could come down to the fourth quarter, no doubt about it.
Right. Yeah, I think that would probably be one of the more exciting games to watch. Too bad it's at 9 a.m. Pacific, but I'm gonna have to get up for that one. So anyway, I'm gonna let you go. But thanks for doing your show, and I'm really excited for next week. Go Bruins!
I appreciate you, Danny. Thanks, man.
All right, have a good one.
All right, our man Danny, resident UCLA fan. He's the one that sent us, we said, that UCLA pennant back there, the vintage one, the vintage UCLA pennant. I like it a lot too. And I like what he said. I like what he said about the Pac-12 obviously being the best conference and wondering if they can get a team in. Like what he said about the potential upset with LSU and Mississippi State happening this weekend. And honestly, Danny, I don't know how I forget. I mean, I know you're on the West Coast. I know you're in California. I know you're 2 hours behind me. It just doesn't resonate with me. Like in the sense of you're going to have to get up to watch LSU and Mississippi State this Saturday at 9 a.m., like you said, which means game day for you starts at like 6 in the morning? Like 6 a.m.? Like, dude, that's crazy. Like, that's rough for a Saturday. That is rough. So I feel for you. I genuinely feel I just don't necessarily think about that all the time. Man, that's some wild stuff. Get another call here. This is great. Let's keep it going. Keep the good times rolling. All right, pull him up. Get him on speaker. All right, you're on the Gridiron Expert. Who's with us?
Hey, Alex, it's college football guy. How are you doing this evening?
Hey, man, we're doing good. How are you?
Oh, not too bad. Just resting from a busy day at work, that's for sure. So, but ready to talk some college football. But it's one thing that kind of gets my mind relaxed after a busy day at work is talking about college football. There's nothing like it.
I feel that, man. It's the best way to kind of wind down and best way to end the day.
Exactly. Well, let me get on here and talk about a little bit. I told you North Carolina was going to be on upset alert after struggling with that thing. I knew it was going to happen, but I knew there was an 18-point favorite, but it's just some way, somehow, App State always finds a way to play those Power 5 teams close. And, well, North Carolina almost pretty much gave App State every opportunity to win that game. But at least they found a way to win it. Man, that was another good game. I don't know what happened to that defense that played so well against South Carolina. They just kind of reverted back to their old selves. I don't know if they were kind of still on cloud nine after that South Carolina win or what. But man, that was just a weird game for Carolina. It seemed like nobody would step up except for really Drake May that was kind of carrying that team on his shoulder until the very end. When we finally got that flip down stop in the second overtime. But man, that was an ugly game for Carolina.
Yeah, it was.
What was your thoughts on that game?
Well, it was. I think it was one of those games where I think we kind of expected UNC to ride the momentum from the South Carolina win. And after what we saw from the defense, especially up front with 9 sacks, it was like, oh, this young, and that's the key, this young App State team with a lot of inexperience. Just wasn't going to be able to keep up. They weren't going to be able to block UNC. The offense wasn't going to be able to keep up if the defense played like they did. And I think it was a mix of just App State getting up. It's a rivalry game. You get up when you play your rivals. I think it was a mix of that. Obviously, last year's game was a thriller. I think part of that excitement and that hostility carried over. App State losing that heartbreaker to UNC. I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, they did. UNC, I think, survived that game. Yeah, very close. So just a lot of I think emotions there where maybe UNC kind of overlooked them, thought, this isn't the same team from last year. We'll breeze past the Mountaineers, and it wasn't the case. So,
we didn't get up 41 points in the fourth quarter, thankfully, this time.
that counts for something, right? That was an unbelievable finish last year.
Yeah. Well, I think this game, if there's any positivity I have to get out of this game, is it kind of humbled North Carolina back. I think Matt Brown is going to get this team back in the books, back to bring them back down level and say, hey, you got to play. Each team is like a champion, like I say, it's a championship type of game. You can't overlook anybody. Otherwise, you're going to result in struggling with the teams that you should handily beat. And while Minnesota is obviously no App State, I'm intrigued to see hopefully that North Carolina's defense will at least get back to where they were when they played against South Carolina. Look, I get Minnesota's offense is an absolute joke, but their defense is legit. But if there's anybody that can make Minnesota's offense look good, it's North Carolina's defense. And I hate to say that, but I just don't know which defense is going to show up for this game. I have mixed emotions. I do think North Carolina wins the game outright just because I think if it gets into what's quote-unquote, I guess, a shootout, Minnesota can't keep up and Minnesota's going to get worn down. But, if there's anything I'm looking for out of this game, I just hope North Carolina's defense will step up finally, will at least step up and get back to where they were when they played against South Carolina.
Yeah, and I think they will. I mean, you're right. I like what you said, that if there's any team that if you want your offense to look good, go play North Carolina. And that was the case last year. If you go look at the numbers, the fact that a team like Virginia had one of their best offensive games of the year against UNC when the Cavaliers had one of the worst offenses in the conference. Like, you just kind of knew you were going to be in for a big day because they couldn't stop anybody. And you got to hope that's not the case this time around, because you're right, Minnesota's offense isn't good. The running game hasn't been there the way we thought it would be. Ethan Caliac-Manis has not played nearly as well as we thought he would. This guy they nicknamed the Greek gunslinger back in the preseason hasn't done anything. He has done absolutely nothing. And, so you hope that this isn't the game where they kind of come to life. And if they do, if you're a Minnesota fan, you have to take that with a grain of salt and be like, yeah, we look good, but it was against UNC. Like, let's be real here. So I do think North Carolina wins this game. I feel confident in that. I think home field advantage plays a big role. Obviously, they own the significant offensive advantage. And, defensively, you could make an argument that, yeah, obviously Minnesota owns the edge, no doubt about that. But that UNC, if they can return to that South Carolina form, isn't too far behind them. We know that talent's there. So,
yeah, they showed against South Carolina. So, they've already raised that expectation level when they sacked them 9 times. Now, it's probably just because South Carolina's offensive line is just that bad. But still, though, 9 sacks is still pretty good. So, we'll see. Hopefully, they get back to that level. At least, if I had to guess right now, I think they will. Because I think this App State game really humbled North Carolina. And because I think, like you said, I think they kind of maybe overlooked App State just a little bit, saying, no, we're going to beat them soundly. And, well, this is what happens when you get cocky. Now, like I said, they got lucky to win that game. But hopefully this kind of humbled themselves back to a little bit to where North Carolina won't overlook Minnesota. Well, they're not going to overlook Minnesota, but at least play every single type of game as you got to give it your best every single week. Or otherwise it's going to be another type of App State type of game.
Exactly.
Well, I just want to wrap up. And I'm going to wrap up my call now. I'll let you go. I'll kind of give you kind of like how I did last week, kind of like my biggest takeaways from week 2 and kind of let you react to it. So I'll kind of, if you don't mind me doing that, I'll kind of shoot you. I got narrowed down to at least 3 takeaways this time, so it's not as long. So if you don't mind me doing that, I'll give you my 3 takeaways, and then I'll get off the phone and kind of let you react to it.
Yeah, hit him with us. Hit him with us quick. We got another caller coming in, so just hit him with us quick, and we'll get him.
Yep. All right. So number 1, okay. Obviously that win over that Texas had over Alabama was huge. So I'm not willing to go on the line and say Texas is back yet. But with them playing like that, they are definitely a playoff contender and definitely a national title contender. Now, if they win their conference, then I might push and say they might be back. But that win they had over Alabama just kind of just shows you that they're finally playing to the talent level that we all knew that they could reach it. And like you said earlier, on their schedule, if Texas plays to their talent level, who's going to beat them on the rest of their schedule? Maybe Oklahoma, maybe, but Texas still has a significant talent gap over Oklahoma. Outside of Oklahoma, I don't know which team's going to beat them. Now, regardless to Alabama, I know that was an ugly game, and what we all expected from the offseason in terms of the offensive line struggles, the QB situation with Jalen Milroe and such, that kind of what we all figured in the preseason was going to happen did happen, unfortunately. But what was kind of shocking to me was how the secondary just kind of gave up there almost in the second half, because we were hearing all offseason how this Alabama secondary was just was going to be one of the best in college football and such. I was buying into the hype because, they have some elite recruits there, and the front seven looks good, and Kevin's still coming back. He is a defensive minded coach, but, man, they got what I thought was going to be. They got out-physical by Texas on both lines of scrimmage, and what I was really most impressed with was Quinn Ewers finally hitting the deep throws finally. Looks like Quinn Ewers seems to have found his confidence. He looked so poised and just so relaxed in that game. Not bothered by the 100,000 fans in the crowd. Maybe a little bit shaky at start, but just got into that rhythm. But, man, I'm not saying Texas is back yet, but they're definitely, with that win, not only a playoff contender, a national title contender. Now, I'm not writing off Alabama yet, because if there's anybody that can make adjustments better than anybody in the country, maybe outside of Kirby Smart, it's Nick Saban. And look, while they still have to go through the gauntlet through the SEC West, good news for Alabama is every single team in the SEC West is down just as bad as them. So there's still a possibility for them to go undefeated and at least play Georgia. Now, of course, you got to beat Georgia, but at least they still have a solid chance. My number 2 takeaway, Miami is now a dark horse for the ACC. Now, I'm not going to go as far back to say the U is that. But, I mean, that was a victory that Marbaugh and company needed really, really badly. I mean, Miami, that was a very impressive victory, especially how it was a close game till the end, but I was just impressed on how that Miami offense just tore up A&M's defense. I mean, A&M's defense, as you know, has been like the strength of that team for many, many years, and they just tore them up, especially in that secondary. That's what shocked me the most in that game. It's just like A&M's defense just laid down and died and just let Miami run all over them. Now, A&M did put up some good numbers, so I was impressed with the offense putting up 33 points, but, of course, the red zones just kind of cursed them there in the end. So A&M's got some things to figure out, but now, I mean, it looks like Miami is starting to play to their talent level. Now, like I said, good news for Miami is at least they have a shot to maybe play against either Florida State or whoever else. But if they can keep climbing up there, there's a very good possibility they might find themselves in the ACC championship. And my third biggest takeaway, the Pac-12 most likely will be, as it stands right now, the best conference in college football, while the SEC, I can't believe I'm saying this, might be the third best conference in college football. I mean, starting with the Pac-12, I mean, as you all know.
Call from.
Oh, we lost it for a second. We had to put a guy on hold. Oh, there we go. Oh. Let's see. We get him back.
Hello?
You still there?
Yeah, what happened?
I think we were trying to put a guy on hold. I don't know if if it worked out or not.
Okay, where did I leave off?
Well, we'll wrap it up here. I know you had mentioned the Pac. You were saying the Pac-12 might be the best conference. The SEC very well could be the worst.
Yeah, just because of how fast. I mean, we'll see how the all conferences go along. I've been on the phone long enough, so I'll let you react to it. Thanks for letting me come on tonight, GE, and I hope you have a good rest of your week.
Hey, we appreciate it, man, and we'll make sure to address all these. Don't worry about it. We got you covered, my guy.
All right, thank you, buddy. All right, you have a good evening.
You too, man. Thank you. All right, and I think we lost Mitch as well. Mitch, give us a call back. We apologize. That was all over the place trying to merge those two calls, or trying to let him keep talking, but also trying to get you on and put you on hold. We need to get a screener. I just need to hire a screener to screen the calls and have them ready to go. So apologize for that, and apologize to college football guy for cutting you off there. We're trying to multitask and did not do that properly. But great points. We're going to touch on. We're going to touch on Texas. We're going to touch on Alabama. We're going to touch on Miami. We're going to touch on the Pac-12. And we got some great questions and comments in the chat, especially like what Doggy just said as well about the SEC West being wide open. We're going to get to that here in a second. I love that question. Love that topic. A lot on that. But let's get to Mitch's call. Hey, Mitch, you here with us?
Yes, sir, I am.
All right. Apologize for those troubles, man. Thanks for calling in.
Nah, it's all right. How you doing, man?
Hey, man, we're doing good. Doing good. No complaints. It's we're in the home stretch. What's that?
All right, I'm back. What's up?
No, good. I'm glad. Yeah, I was saying we're kind of in the home stretch. Tuesday is kind of like our hump day around here because it's 2 more days till football starts back. Thursday night football comes around and it's a pretty good day.
Yeah, it is a crazy weekend of football, NFL, and everything. Aaron Rodgers tearing his Achilles, which is insane.
That was brutal to watch, man. That was I hate that. I'm not even a Jets fan. I'm really not. But to see one of the all-time greats go down like that and probably ultimately end his career, that was pretty heartbreaking.
Yeah, it was. So, did you watch any of the Sidehawk game on Saturday at all?
I did. I watched the entire thing.
Yeah, it was stressful, but I honestly had more fun. Had a lot of fun. I was actually pretty close to the former president because he was there. I was pretty close to him.
Really, I didn't know exactly where he was sitting. I mean, I saw the through just all the different social media, the just mobs of crowds around him. So, but I didn't know exactly where his seats were.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. You could see he was sitting in the suite and everyone was just going freaking wild.
That's awesome. That's super cool. I love that.
Yeah. So other than the L, it was a pretty fun game overall.
Yeah, I would say, I would say it was fun. The atmosphere obviously was rocking. Obviously, you had all the presidential candidates there, which would made for an interesting, environment, or just added to that, obviously. But then the game itself, it was one of those things where, I mean, that pick six was the difference maker. That ended up being the do all be all when it was all said and done. But credit to Iowa State, man. I mean, Iowa was really in control of that game from start to finish. Yet probably should have won by a lot more, but Iowa State didn't let that happen. They found a way to keep themselves in it. Had a shot to go down there and tie it in the final minutes. I mean, the way Iowa was playing, you wouldn't have thought they would have had a shot to do that. So really want to give that Cyclones team a lot of credit for what they did.
Yeah, our defense is just amazing. Hopefully our offense could get the passing game together a little bit. Then maybe we could get a couple more wins and hopefully make a bowl game.
Yeah, I'm not going to rule that out either, because I mean the offense did struggle, but as obviously was struggling against one of the better defenses in the country. I mean Iowa, hasn't looked as good defensively as they were last year, but they're still a top 25, top 30 unit. I think this game against Ohio coming up is pretty massive. I think that's a bit of a trap game for Iowa State. Can't afford to drop that one. But I think you're going to see the passing game kind of explode a little bit more in that game than we've seen so far this year. And like you said, the defense alone is going to be enough to keep them in a lot of these games.
Yeah, it is. And I'm just happy that the Big 12 is not that good this year, especially considering what we're going through with all the gambling and all that other nonsense. So it's a good year that the conference is down overall.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I kind of thought the same thing. We were talking about that earlier in the show. I mean, when you look at it, obviously Texas is number one in the conference, but then there's no really clear-cut number two. I mean, Kansas State looks very good. Kansas has looked solid, but, Texas Tech's 0-2. Baylor's 0-2. None of the newcomers, I feel like none of the four newcomers are legitimate contenders to make the Big 12 championship. And once they hit conference play, it'll be a bit of a culture shock. So, it's pretty wide open for that second spot outside of Texas. Oklahoma's in there, sure, but I feel like they're gonna, after what I've seen, might not live up to the hype once again. So yeah, it's a pretty wide open year to the point where even if Iowa State, we're not saying goes and contends for a Big 12 title, but has an opportunity to maybe beat up on some other members and get to that 6-win mark.
Yeah, call me crazy, but I think Kansas could be a dark horse for that number 2 spot. They have looked pretty phenomenal so far in the first 2 games.
They have, and what people are forgetting too, and I know it was just Missouri State, but they didn't even have Jalen Daniels in that game. So they played with Jason Bean in the first game, and then Daniels comes back for Illinois and just lit them up. 34-23, that doesn't show how bad that game really was. I mean, Kansas destroyed them in that game. And you're right. I mean, with the way their offense is playing, they have an opportunity to maybe, this is a team, could go 8 wins, 9 wins. If they keep it up, because you're right, they look absolutely insane.
Yeah, I think they could, especially putting that many yards and points against the Big Ten defense. It's pretty good, and it looks like Kansas' defense has improved a little bit from last year, which is a great thing for them.
Yeah, and that was the biggest thing, right? Like if Kansas wanted to take that next step, they had to improve defensively. I was never worried about the offense with Jalen Daniels and Devin Neal. Never worried about that. But the defense looked to live up to the hype and to look the part against Illinois. I think we have to take that with a little salt because like Illinois offensively was never going to be that good to begin with, and defensively they lost so much. They looked horrible against Toledo. Probably should have lost that game. Obviously looked horrible against Kansas. So Illinois is in for I think a rough season. That they'll get murdered this week against Penn State. They'll get destroyed in that game. And it's plain and simple. They're gonna get absolutely annihilated against Penn State, and they'll drop to 1-2. And this is definitely not the same Illinois team that we saw last year.
Yeah, and I'm really surprised because Brett Belima I think he's a good fit there for Illinois style,
Absolutely. Yeah, he's been a Big Ten guy through and through. That's why he failed in the SEC at Arkansas, and why he was never going to pan out in the SEC was because his brand and his style was never going to work in that conference. But in the Big Ten, it will, and we saw that last year. And so, I think Illinois is probably still a bowl team. I really do. But just for anyone thinking that, I saw a post earlier today. It goes, yeah, we've started slow, but we can still win the Big Ten West. I'm like, you're not winning the Big Ten West. Like, come on, let's be honest here. I'm not trying to bash Illinois, but it's just not happening.
Yeah, the Big Ten West is also pretty wide open right now. Wisconsin just lost, and Nebraska looks like they freaking suck.
They do.
Northwestern, we obviously know what's going on there.
Yeah, I mean, there's no true. I mean, you can make the argument that the best team in the Big Ten West right now is Iowa, and that's not even that great.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know. I think their offenses got too much overhyped in the preseason because they looked better from last year, but like not by a wide margin like everyone expected them to.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of the thing. I think the initial reaction that I have taken from the teams in the West have been all of them. I feel like are underperforming with the exception of Northwestern.
Yeah, I agree. What do you think of Texas going on the road and beating on Bama?
I think like we kind of said earlier, I feel like that was turning the page for this program as a whole. I mean, it was one of those things where I wasn't necessarily shocked that Texas won. Like I picked Alabama to win. I thought Alabama would win. Wasn't shocked that Texas won. I was shocked at how they won. To win in Tuscaloosa by 10 points, to be really fully in control of that game from start to finish. I know Bama took the lead late third quarter, early fourth quarter, whatever that was. But the defense was phenomenal. For Quinn Ewers to go in there and throw for nearly 350 yards, that is insanely impressive against an Alabama defense and secondary that was supposed to be one of the best in the conference. Clearly was not the part. To do it in Tuscaloosa at night, I just didn't see it happening like that. I figured if Texas was going to win, it'd be very, very close, and it really wasn't when you look at it on paper and then winning by double digits. So massive victory for Texas, man. I mean, that was just it felt like this could be the start of Texas kind of returning to the form that we've been so used to, or were so used to seeing over 10 years ago, and maybe not Alabama becoming irrelevant, but starting to fall off a little bit.
Yeah, and I hope Texas goes undefeated until they play us in November at Jack Trice. That would be wild if we somehow upsetted them in November.
Oh man, can you imagine they come out there, undefeated or a one-loss team, and Iowa State is the team to spoil their playoff hopes? That'd be unbelievable. It'd be like what y'all did to Oklahoma State over 10 years ago. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, it would. All right, I'm gonna head out. Take care, man, and have a good week.
Hey, Mitch, we appreciate it, man. You guys got a game this Friday?
Yeah, we do.
All right, man. Win, lose, how you feeling?
We're gonna win. Hey, hit me up on Twitter, bro.
I do. I need to. I was looking for you the other day. I think it left my DM. I'm gonna find you. Are you still? What's your username on there?
I'll type it in the chat. It's kind of long.
All right. Yeah. Type in the chat. I'll save it, and I'll definitely hit you up, man, for sure.
All right. Take care, man.
All right, Mitch. Appreciate it, man. Talk to you later. All right, our man. I'm still gonna call him Cyclone Mitch. That's what I knew him for years. Mitch Thayer, our guy over big Iowa State fan. Love it. Appreciate you and the support, man. We'll definitely be talking to you here soon. Here's what we're going to do. Okay, we got a lot of comments. I see them rolling in. I love them. I love what I'm seeing. And so what I'm going to do for a second is we're going to check, make sure we're good there. I don't think we missed a call recently. Yeah, I think we're in good shape. All right, so what I'm going to do, we're going to stop the calls for a second so I can address y'all's chat, what's going on in the chat, because we've got some really good discussion points. And then if you want to call in based on what we're saying to some of these questions and answers, that's great. The number is scrolling across the bottom the entire time. So you don't have to have that big banner up there. But this is some good discussion from what you guys are bringing up. And what we'll do, hide that, and we'll just kind of find out where we want to start. I want to real quick say welcome personally out loud to our man Jerry Turner. Good to see you. Congrats on the big win with Syracuse. I'll tell you what, Jerry, Syracuse came through clutch for me. They were one of our expert picks last week. And I saw that spread. We got it in at Syracuse minus 23-point favorites. And I was like, that is a steal. That is a steal against Western Michigan. Are you kidding me? And they had that thing covered like in the first half. I mean, it was unbelievable. A rough start, right? Like Western Michigan scores like the second play of the game, and then Syracuse took off after that. So they look really good these last 2 weeks against I know it's just Colgate and Western Michigan, but still, obviously the Purdue game coming up, as you guys are talking about, that's going to be a fun one. Should be a better offensive game than you guys think. That Syracuse offense looked really, really good. Purdue's offense has looked a lot better than we thought. That's the power of a Graham Harrell as your offensive coordinator. So, Jerry, I want to welcome you. Thank you for being here. Of course, college football guy, don't worry. We're going to get to your points. I promise you that. Our man Mark, big Miami fan. Michael Buck, good to see you. Happy to have you here, Michael. Our man Will, resident Rutgers fan. Happy to have you here as well. Thank you for your support. And let's see, Christopher Simmons, Alabama fan. We appreciate you. And we're going to get to all of you guys, all of y'all's comments for sure. But, and DJ Big Boss, good to see you as well. Nice to have you here, man. Really appreciate you. And Mitch, thank you for putting in your Twitter handle. I will do that right after the stream. Right after the stream, I'll hit you up for sure. But I liked what was said up here earlier. I think it was Doggy that asked it or mentioned it. He said, the SEC West is just wide open. Yeah, there we go. The SEC West is wide open this year. And I like what that said, because I was literally crunching these numbers the other day and looking at the SEC West as a whole, because I thought the same thing after week 2. If you look at the SEC West, which for years has been known as the best division in all of college football, and very well could have lost that title. The best division in college football, you could argue now, is the Big Ten East, with the likes of Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. Maryland's in there. Michigan State's in there. Rutgers is in there. Obviously, those top 3 are the more elite teams, but still not an easy division. But you look at the West, it is wide open. And I'm telling you, by the end of this month, I think you'll know who's going to win that division. By the end of September, you will know who wins the West. And that sounds premature, but hear me out for a second, all right? Pull up the schedule. What we're going to do. Because you look at what happened. Alabama just lost to Texas. Well, that's not a conference game. Might well be next year, but not this year. But Alabama doesn't look that great. LSU has already lost to Florida State. The two favorites in the West have already taken a non-conference loss, which isn't the end of the world, doesn't ruin their SEC title hopes, but it's like, whoa, that wasn't expected. We didn't expect both of them to lose. When you're that big of a favorite, you might lose to a conference game. LSU or Alabama might lose to the other, and one of them's going to have to lose later on, but not to Florida State, not to Texas, especially at home. Now they've each got a loss on the resume. Ole Miss, yeah, won by 17 against Tulane. Didn't really look all that great in it. Keep in mind, Tulane had a backup quarterback, and the only reason Ole Miss really won that game, or at least while they closed out the game, was because they benefited from a false start. If they don't call that false start, Tulane stuffs them, has a chance to go tie the game. Who knows what happens? A&M lost at Miami. Miami looked phenomenal. A&M, as a college football guy, when he was on the call, said they put up solid numbers, still lost by 15 points. The defense was nowhere to be found. And you remember a couple of years ago when we were bragging about A&M's defense, saying they were going to be so good with all these, blue chip recruits they were bringing in. Now look at them. Where are they? They're not doing anything. They got torched by Tyler Van Dyke. So Alabama already has a loss. LSU has a loss. A&M has a loss. Mississippi State is not a contender in the West. Sorry to tell you if you're a Bulldog fan, but they're just not. They might be a bowl team, but they're not an SEC West contender. You can go ahead and cross them out. And even if you want to make the argument that they are a contender, they looked horrible against Arizona. We're an inch away from maybe continuing that game into overtime and maybe losing that game. And keep in mind, forced 5 Arizona turnovers and still had to go to overtime against them. So they're out of the question. Alabama's got a loss. LSU's got a loss. Mississippi State's not included. A&M's not included. Auburn didn't look good at California, as our man South Tex, Danny, as he said. They didn't look good when Auburn traveled out to California and probably should have lost that game had it not been for an injury to California's running back, Jade Knott, and also a bunch of missed field goals by the Golden Bears. Then you got Arkansas. Arkansas a contender? Probably not. Probably not. They just don't look good. And when has Arkansas really ever been a contender? And when has Arkansas ever delivered in the clutch, right? They just haven't. The offensive line looks atrocious. A team that has been known for bullying teams up front and is supposed to have a very strong rushing offense has been non-existent. And while I do think Arkansas probably does get the win this Saturday against BYU, more than likely they'll start 3-0. Then they start conference play with a 4-game stretch that includes a road game at LSU, then A&M in Dallas, then on the road at Ole Miss, then on the road at Alabama. Arguably the most difficult 4-game stretch of any team in the entire country this season. And whoever's calling in, we're going to get to you in 1 second. I'm ranting right now and I'm feeling good, so we're gonna get to your call. Call us back here in a minute. I promise you we'll take it. But you're looking at the West, right? Arkansas, Auburn, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Bama, LSU, A&M. Every single one of them has weaknesses, and not a single one of them has looked good. You look at the schedule. I said you'll know who wins the division by the end of the month. Why? Look at this week. LSU plays Mississippi State. If Mississippi State beats LSU, LSU's out. They're done for. I fully believe that. Their playoff hopes are done. Their SEC title hopes are done. Not because they take one conference loss, but because the road's only going to get tougher from there. If you can't beat Mississippi State in Starkville, you're not beating Ole Miss. You're not beating Alabama. You're not beating some more of the elites. So they play this week. That's going to be very telling, right? A couple other teams have non-conference games. Should take care of business. Next week, huge. Arkansas goes on the road to LSU. That's massive. Auburn goes on the road to A&M, where the home team has traditionally struggled. Although many would argue that A&M will win that game. We'll find out. Ole Miss plays Alabama. That will be massive. And then Mississippi State goes on the road to South Carolina. Obviously, if the Bulldogs lose to LSU and then they lose to Carolina, they're done for. 2 losses in the SEC West, you're not winning that division. It's just not happening. So that's next week. And then week 5 comes along. Arkansas plays Texas A&M. Alabama plays Mississippi State. The Bulldogs obviously have a very rough start to the season. Alabama and LSU in a 3-game stretch. LSU plays Ole Miss. All of those games I just mentioned will happen before October 1st. They will happen before the end of this month. And by the time the dust settles and we come at you with our week 5 recap on Sunday morning on October 1st, you'll know who's going to win that division. Because you're going to know if one of these teams is looking a lot better. If Alabama's starting to look like a contender, they would have wins on the road against Mississippi State and against Ole Miss. You'll know if LSU's legit, they would have wins over Mississippi State and Arkansas and a road game over Ole Miss. Maybe Ole Miss is legit. Maybe they beat Alabama and LSU. Ole Miss goes to Tuscaloosa, but they host the Tigers. Or maybe they just beat up on each other. Maybe they just all beat up on each other. You know, Ole Miss beats LSU, who beats Mississippi State, who beats South Carolina. You know, just all these things, they stack on another. The bottom line is this is no longer the toughest division in college football. There is no clear-cut contender. You'd argue it's Alabama, but does anyone feel crazy confident in Alabama after what we just saw this last Saturday? I don't. I think they'll annihilate South Florida this Saturday. I think they'll annihilate USF. But if you ask me, do you want me to pick Alabama to win their next 10 games? I don't know if I could do that because the schedule is simply too tough. Kind of like what Danny said earlier, this is a division, not even a conference, a division that very well could just beat up on each other, just like the Pac-12 is going to beat up on each other way out west. A division that will beat up on each other, that will make it pointless for whoever wins the West, because that's the sad thing, right? Like you look at LSU last year, they were a 3-loss team, right? Were they not? 9-3, 10-2? 9-3, I think. Got into the SEC championship game, but we all knew that even if LSU had upset Georgia, they weren't going to the college football playoff. And so you could find a situation like that where whoever wins the West is a solid team, but it doesn't matter what they do in the SEC championship. All you're doing there is getting bragging rights, because even if you win the title over Georgia or Tennessee, whoever it may be, you're not going to the playoff because you're going to have at least 2 losses. And that would be very unfortunate. I mean, imagine getting the SEC championship, winning one of the toughest conferences in all of college football, and your reward is just the Sugar Bowl or some New Year's Six Bowl. That's good for some people. That'd be huge for Arkansas or Ole Miss or Mississippi State or whatever. But for our team, heck, could be even good for A&M. It's garbage as they've been lately. But for Alabama and LSU, their standard is the Final Four. Their standard is the playoff, and 2 losses isn't going to get them there. So, yeah, the SEC West is really wide open this year. I mean, insanely wide open this year. And by the end of September, you will know who will win this division. There will be a clear-cut frontrunner by the end of September. Whether that's Alabama, whether that's LSU, whether that's Ole Miss, all of which are ranked in the West right now, whether that is Texas A&M, who wakes up and goes on a tear these next few weeks and beats Auburn and beats Arkansas and finds themselves back in the rankings and sets up this colossal showdown against Alabama in October. Maybe so. But right now, that's what we're looking at here. That's what we're looking at. So, yeah, I love that question from Doggy. Love that comment from Doggy as well. I don't think we talk about it nearly enough. When you think SEC West, you think A&M, you think Alabama, LSU. This year, that's not necessarily the case. It's anybody's game. Every team has a weakness, but I believe anybody in the West could beat anybody in the West right now. And I genuinely believe that. Not saying it's going to happen, but I believe that anybody in that division could beat anybody else in that division. It's pretty crazy to think about. Great point from Doggy. I like that. Like that comment a lot. Let me respond to this. Get that knocked out there. But yeah, thank you very much. And you know, I'll add this one too. I'm not meaning disrespect to your team. You know, if you're talking about the West, if I bash one of your teams or said they're not a contender, but I mean, the writing's on the wall, right? I think one of those things is like we all genuinely want to believe that our team is going to be an elite contender. We all want to believe that our team is going to go out there and beat anybody on any given Saturday. We hope they do, right? But you sometimes have to read between the lines and go, it's sure as hell not happening. It's just not happening. And for some of these teams, it's just not happening. From a historical standpoint, it's not. From a talent standpoint, it's not. The writing is already on the wall for a handful of these teams, not just in the West, but nationwide. And yet there are a lot of people out there that are still kind of painting this narrative that something special could happen, when bottom line is it's not. It's just not. But excuse the rant, guys. I apologize for that, but I love the question. I love the topic. I literally was just thinking about this the other day. It's a phenomenal point, and it's something that's going to be really, really interesting to see how it plays out over these next 3 weeks. I mean, within the first 2-3 conference games that have been played in the SEC, we're going to have some really good clarity in that division. The East is clear cut. It's Georgia's to lose, right? I mean, and Georgia will have – Georgia locks up the – if Florida beats Tennessee this Saturday, go ahead and just hand Georgia the SEC East. It's done for. And I'll tell you that right now. If they get it, if Georgia, if Tennessee loses in Gainesville for the 10th straight time, then Georgia has a lock on the East. It's done for. So that's something really, really interesting. All right, let's see what else. Will Lou, what are my predictions for Rutgers, Virginia Tech? Well, if you remember in the preseason, I predicted Rutgers to win that game. Predicted Rutgers to beat Virginia Tech in the preseason to start 3-0, which was going to be so important for them if they want to get to a bowl game this year. My prediction still remains the same. I still believe Rutgers will beat Virginia Tech on Saturday. And as you have pointed out, Rutgers and Virginia Tech's defense are both very good. Absolutely. Rutgers has the better running game. Virginia Tech, better passing game. I'm not saying Virginia Tech can't win that game. I'm not sitting there and saying I'm very confident, like 100% Rutgers is winning, but I do believe they will. I do believe they're going to get the job done. I think the defense, this will be the toughest defense that Virginia Tech has faced this year. They didn't look all that great against Purdue last week. And now they're going on the road. Piscataway is going to be rocking. I have confidence and Rutgers get the job done. The key for Rutgers in this game, more than anything, Will, is they can't afford to start slow. You know, they started kind of slow against Northwestern, not horribly, started really slow against Temple. If they get out there and they start slow and they're lethargic and they kind of allow Virginia Tech to take the crowd out of it, and maybe, you know, Rutgers finds themselves down, 10-0 early or something like that, they're in big trouble, really big trouble. Because I don't really think this Rutgers team is built to come from behind to win games. I'm not saying they've got to get out to a massive lead every game, but like if they find themselves down a lot, I don't believe the offense and the offensive style is there to find themselves mounting a double-digit comeback consistently. So the key for them is going to be starting strong. It's going to be shutting down Virginia Tech defensively, and I actually think this game's relatively low scoring. I'd be shocked if either team exceeds. I would be shocked if either team exceeds 28 points. I'll tell you that. I would be very surprised if that happens. But great question. Yes, is Jimbo Fisher on the hot seat? 100%. 100% he is. And he might be gone by the end of the year. A&M was the first step in a long road to being back. I do not think most Miami fans believe that U is back, but it was great to see some progress. I agree with you, Mark. I do. I don't think anybody's saying that U's back right now. I think you can't really be back, I think, after one game. I think it takes a little bit of time for that to get there. Now we'll take the call. We'll take this call. But I do think this was the first step in a long road to getting back and could set up the Canes for at least an 8-win season, but maybe even more if they keep playing like they did. All right, let's see. All right, you were on the Gridiron Expert. Who's with us?
Josh Wynn.
Hey, Josh, how's it going?
Josh Winston.
Yeah, Josh, how's it going?
Yeah, good. Is my phone acting better this time?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit better. We can hear you a little bit more clear.
Okay, you think Washington can beat Oregon?
I do. Yeah, I do think Washington can beat Oregon 100%. I'm not predicting that game as of now, but Washington looks really, really good.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the Pac-12 is wide open this year. But, a lot of those teams are going to go to different conferences. So I'm pretty sure Oregon is going to probably lose a few games. Probably the Utah and Washington.
Yeah, Oregon's got a very difficult schedule. You got Utah, you got Washington, you got USC, all of them on the slate. Definitely can't overlook that. So, Oregon's got the talent to run the table and go 11-1 and maybe make the playoff. But like our guy South Texas called in earlier and said, I think the Pac-12 just unfortunately is going to beat up on each other.
Now, I feel like if anybody has a chance to make the playoff in the Pac-12, it's going to be either USC or Washington.
Yeah, I think those are your probably two best bets right now. Washington's definitely the more complete team. They definitely have a much better defense than USC. That's why that game in, I believe, the first week of November, they face off in LA. That's going to be a massive, massive game. I think you can make the argument that the team that is best set up to make a playoff run is Washington, but the team that maybe arguably has the most talent is USC. So it's going to be very, very interesting.
Yeah, because I just feel like, Washington's quarterback, Michael Pittman Jr., he's been through a lot, switching from Indiana to Washington, but I think he's improved in a lot of areas that he wasn't that good at in Indiana. But I feel like if he wants to, if he goes up there and tries, he could beat Kevin Williams and get the Heisman.
Yeah, that's the beauty of the Pac-12 too. Everybody in the Pac-12 is like a Heisman contender. Bo Nix, Michael Penix, Caleb Williams, Shadur Sanders is in the mix. I mean, just loaded at quarterback. Hey, Josh, we appreciate the call, man. Thank you for calling in.
You're welcome. Okay, bye, Joy.
You too. All right, thanks, Josh. I think he was watching the stream, waiting for listening to the answer through the stream. I think was what was going on there. I think he was listening, and obviously there's a delay. So, but Josh, we appreciate the phone call, man. Good insight. Thank you very much for calling in. Hit a couple more comments here. Michael, do you trust Burt? Do you really trust Burt? I don't. Not a bit. Not a bit. Brett Bielema is one of those interesting guys where, he's a good guy. He's had his moments, but he's he's a worse version of Brian Kelly, and here's why. When has Brett Bielema ever won a big game? We don't talk about it nearly enough because he hasn't coached at a big enough program for it to stand out or been at a high. Think about it. Yeah, he won some Big Ten championships at Wisconsin. Good for you. Then you went to the Rose Bowl every year, and guess what? He lost every single Rose Bowl. Then he goes to Arkansas, and every massive game at Arkansas that was really, really important, he lost, if we're being honest. Yeah, he had a couple wins over some ranked teams here and there, but the games that were garnering a lot of hype, got people pumped and ready to go, he never delivered. And you could bet on Burt costing Arkansas just about every game. And Arkansas could be up 100-0 entering the fourth quarter, and he'd find a way for them to lose. And then he comes to Illinois. He's helped rebuild the program, but Illinois was in the driver's seat of the Big Ten West last year, and Burt blew it. They didn't win the Big Ten West, went to a bowl game against Mississippi State, were in control of that game for a while, found a way to blow that game as well. So he doesn't get enough attention because he has, like Brian Kelly at Notre Dame, wasn't as big of a name of the program, didn't have his team in the running for national titles or anything like that. Really wasn't taking his team to any New Year's Six BCS caliber bowls except for a few years at Wisconsin. But when he did, he lost every single one. So Brett Bielema is just a below average coach that can't deliver. He's a good guy, good person. He's got a great philosophy. He's a great fit in the Big Ten, and he's at a great spot in Illinois for a team that has no expectations of winning a title or competing for a championship. They're a team that's been so bad for so long. They're going to be happy to win 6, 7, maybe every now and then 8 games. And then maybe once in a blue moon, maybe you do win the Big Ten West and get your butt beat by Ohio State or Michigan. Good for you. But bottom line is he's never going to deliver. He's never going to get the team over the hump to where they need to be. And he's never going to win the big game. He's never done it in his entire collegiate career, coaching career. And he sure as heck isn't going to do it now. So if I'm a team getting coached by Brett Bielema, I have no faith in him delivering in the clutch, no faith in him winning the games when they matter the most. And that sounds harsh, but it's just the fact of the matter. And it's not just based off of 1 year. It's based off his entire coaching career. And that's not a very good track record to have. So I don't trust Brett Bielema with anything. Thoughts on Syracuse at Purdue? Jerry, going to be a great game. Going to be a fun I think we touched on it briefly. Fun offensive game. I love the quarterback battle between Garrett Schrader and Hudson Card. I think it's going to be a very similar game to what we saw last year, right? Last year's game in the Carrier Dome was phenomenal. And I think that Syracuse winning that game in the final seconds. And I think that we're going to be in for a similar type of ending, a similar type of game this time around. I think I picked Purdue to win that game back in the preseason. I believe I picked Purdue. And right now, I've been very impressed with Purdue. They nearly took down Fresno State. They took down Virginia Tech. They've looked good, better than we thought they would under Ryan Walters, right? But this is a legitimate test against a Syracuse team that's looked really, really good. Yes, against weaker opponents, but it's looked really, really good through their first 2 games. And it seems to be the general consensus throughout the chat is that Purdue will get their revenge as well. Let's see here. Real quick, Michael, do I think Dabo is replacing Saban soon? I don't know. I don't know if Alabama would make that move now. Dabo, like Alabama, seems to be trending in the wrong direction. You know, he's missed the playoff. It'll now be 3 years in a row because Clemson won't make it this year. Looked horrible against Duke. Didn't look good against Charleston Southern. And so it's one of those things like he's still a very, very good coach. And he's a great guy. But will Alabama, despite him being an alum, will Alabama pull the trigger when Saban calls it quits and bring in Dabo? Is he going to be a guy that's going to excite the fan base? Because what he did at Clemson was great. But like we mentioned in last week's stream, when he has not had generational talent at quarterback, Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence, really, when he hasn't had that, Clemson hasn't done much. They've had good years, but they haven't done that much. So he's definitely hitting a rough patch in his career. Is that going to prevent him or cost him, I should say? Will this rough patch cost Dabo the Alabama job? A lot of people believe he's the front runner to replace Saban whenever he calls it a career. He would be a great replacement. Do I think Saban calls it a career soon? I actually do. I think we are nearing the end of Nick Saban's career in Tuscaloosa, and I think it's going to hit sooner than we think. I think people joke about it because, oh, he's got 5 more years. I don't think so. I would venture to say, honestly, that if somehow Alabama were to bounce back and go on to win the national championship this year, if they do not be surprised if Nick Saban calls it quits after that. I would not be shocked if he. And Nick Saban's not going to be the type of guy that announces it mid-season. He's not going to make a spectacle out of it, where it's like one last ride or anything like that. He'll just do it. It'll be like you'll be on the couch, breaking news, Nick Saban retires. But if Alabama were to come back and win it all this year somehow, do not be shocked if Nick Saban calls it quits. Be very interesting. Let's see. Who else we got here? Everybody's saying that Dion might replace Saban. And that's possible. Possible. Let's see. Cross that bridge when we get there, though. Paxton says Texas has arrived. They're not back. They have arrived. Scotty B, Baylor King, good to see you. Happy to have you here. I don't think I gave you a shout out earlier. Same to you with you, Walter Mackey. Nice to have you. Matthew Hazelhorst. Yeah, man, I'm glad you're here. Hey, no worries, man. Better late than never. You know how it goes. We're just happy you guys are able to come in and chat a little bit. That's what we're here for. Let's see. I'm still catching up on a couple of the chat of the thing. There was another great question. I missed it. I'm sure. Let's see. Michael says KJ is going to lead Arkansas past Alabama. I believe that when I see it. Although KJ is one of the better quarterbacks, not just in the SEC, but in the country. I do believe that. Let's see. Where else am I? Y'all filled up the chat. This is great. Why hasn't Arkansas State fired Butch Jones yet? It's this thing called a buyout, unfortunately, that for some reason universities across the country ink these coaches to way too big of deals and way too long of deals, and then it ends up backfiring on them. Just look at what's happening with Mel Tucker at Michigan State right now. Granted, his is a bit of a not necessarily a performance issue; it's more of an off-the-field issue. But he's got a massive buyout. They can fire him with cause and prevent the buyout. And they look. Bottom line, Michigan State's been looking to get rid of Mel Tucker for a while. And I'm not putting that on this scandal at all. But I'm saying Michigan State wasn't going to amount to much this year. They were going to be a 5-win team at the max, 6 at the best. But I say 4 or 5. They would have fired him or wanted to fire him, but they probably wouldn't have because he had an $80 million buyout because he had one decent year that we all knew was a hoax. So and that's what Arkansas State did. Butch Jones hasn't even had a good year, but he was a big name that probably demanded a little bit more money because he's like, I coached at Cincinnati and Tennessee, therefore, and it hasn't panned out for him. But I will tell you this, Michael, why hasn't it happened yet? I don't know. He will be fired by the end of October. If A-State continues to play the way they've been playing, they've been outscored 110-3 this year. If they lose to Stony Brook on Saturday, he's gone on Sunday. If they beat Stony Brook, great. They'll lose a few more games in dominating fashion later on. He'll be gone by the end of October at the latest. So it's coming. It's coming. Let's see here. DM, you might be gone already, but DM, I appreciate you. Thank you for your support, my guy. We appreciate you and all of your support for being here, not just in the chat, but in the comments as well for all the videos. So thank you. The great question from Clement. I like this one. Is Ryan Day, and someone I guess asked it, he was answering it. Ryan Day is on the hot seat if Ohio State loses 2 or more games this season. Ryan Day will be fired, I think. As you said, Clement, you put it perfectly. Buckeye Nation is already restless. And if I'm an Ohio State fan right now, I definitely have not been impressed by the way the team has looked against Indiana and Youngstown State. And I'm not nervous that Ohio State would lose to Western Kentucky, but Western Kentucky will put some points on the Buckeyes. And then you enter conference play. And to expect Ohio State to hang with Penn State in Michigan and Notre Dame here in a couple weeks, next weekend, that's a concern. There is a chance that Ohio State could very well lose 2 games. There's a chance they could lose 3. The way Ohio State's playing, they could lose all 3 of their big games to Notre Dame, Penn State, and Michigan. And if that's the case, he will be gone. If they lose 2 games and miss out on the playoff, he will be gone. Because that's just, for them, that's not acceptable. I know they made the playoff last year, but let's be honest. Did they deserve it? I mean, look, they got in there, almost beat Georgia, good for them. But it wasn't the way they wanted to get there. Still had their shot. That's all that matters. But, didn't win the Big Ten. Didn't even make the Big Ten championship. Barely lose to Georgia. Made the national championship a few years ago. Got blown out to Alabama. Made it a few years, like the year before that. Lost to Clemson in heartbreaking fashion. So, they've had good years, but Ohio State isn't looking for good years. They're looking for championships. And he hasn't even won a championship of any kind, not even a conference championship in the last 2 years. And at this rate, with the way Penn State and Michigan are playing, he might not get it for a 3rd straight year. And that is a drought by Ohio State standards and not acceptable by their standards either. Let's see here. Let's see here. What are my thoughts on Notre Dame after week 2? That they are one of the best teams in the country. Obviously, they're a top 10 team in the country. They're a legitimate playoff contender. The NC State win was very impressive to me. NC State's not the best team in the world by any means, but I was very impressed with how Notre Dame kind of collected themselves. First play after a 2-hour rain delay. A lot of teams typically come out sluggish, especially on the road, and Notre Dame bust out for an 80-yard touchdown. So I think the mindset is there. They had the thing with Notre Dame has been they've been missing a quarterback for a long, long time. They were never going to make the playoff or win a championship with Tyler Buckner or Drew Pine. Ian Book was solid. He wasn't going to get him there. Jack Cohn was solid. He wasn't going to get. They never had that true elite quarterback that some of the teams they were losing to had. You know, they played Trevor Lawrence and lost that. Who was it? Mac Jones. That was the quarterback when they lost to Alabama a few years ago in the playoff. Like, they've gotten there, but what they've been missing was a true elite quarterback that their opponents had. Now they've got one, and they've got everything to go with it. They got a phenomenal offensive line, a phenomenal run game, and a phenomenal defense. So I love Notre Dame this year. Think they're going to be in for a very, very special season, and I think that will be reinforced even more when, not if, but when they beat Ohio State next Saturday. I do believe that. Let's see. Jerry says they're his college football playoff dark horse. I like that. I might, I don't even know. I don't even know if I'm a proud ASU alum. I am an alum. I enjoyed my time there. I enjoyed the people and the culture and the classes and my professors, but I could care less, honestly, about their athletics, if I'm being honest with you. Arkansas State really suffers from like a little man syndrome, that they think they're bigger than they are. Everybody in the athletic department over there feel like they're bigger than they are. It's just kind of the way it is. Bottom line is they might not even be this. They're really not even the second best athletic program in the state, if we're being honest. Arkansas is number one, and UCA at the FCS level is number two. Like it's Arkansas, UCA, and Arkansas State. Like, so it's kind of funny how it works out for them. But I did enjoy my time there. Enjoy the city, enjoy the people. I think that's what matters. It's about the college experience, and that's what it's about. So yeah, a lot of stuff to kind of break down here, guys, that we just kind of hit on. I went on the rant about the SEC West. We talked about some coaches that were on the hot seat. I'll tell you real quick before we slowly wrap things up tonight. We talked about our upset alert that we typically do every Tuesday, right? Like, this is what we're going to do on live streams. And you remember there is the criteria to be on upset alert is it's a double-digit underdog. Double digits is the key that could win the game outright. So we're not saying it's going to happen. We're not picking this team to win. We're not picking this team to cover necessarily, although you'll find out if we are over on the gridironexpert.com with those expert picks. Do not want to miss out on those. I'm serious. Picks come out tomorrow. They're going to be winners. That's what classifies an upset. A double-digit underdog that could win the game outright. And there's actually two. I had one, but I just remembered another one. And let me type it in so we have it. The spread might be loosely different depending on where you get your spreads, but this is what I've been seeing. All right, there we go. So the number one upset alert, possibly for this weekend, Northern Illinois against Nebraska. Northern Illinois against Nebraska. This is a game where Matt Rule and the Cornhuskers are going to have to be very, very careful. Now, NIU hasn't looked great, right? They beat a Boston College team in week one, a Boston College team that's really, really bad. And then they lost. I can't remember who they lost to. The Northern Illinois lost to like Fordham or somebody like last week, an FCS program in week two. So that's a concern, right? So Northern Illinois very up and down. But Jeff Sims might not be playing in this game, not because they're benching him, although they should, but because he's been battling a little bit. I think it was like a back injury, an ankle injury, whatever it was. And so they were struggling a little bit there. That could be a blessing in disguise for the Cornhuskers. Come out with a new quarterback that maybe lights up the Huskies, and they never give the job back to Jeff Sims. That's what I would do. If the offense is clicking and looks a lot better, you don't let Jeff Sims play another down for you this season unless you are down to your no one else at quarterback but him, because he is the reason that Nebraska is 0-2. The defense, honestly, has played relatively well, but the offense has struggled mightily because of his mistakes and his poor turnovers. That's why this is on upset alert. If he plays, he will force some more turnovers. And Northern Illinois has the experience on offense to go out and win this game. We've seen Northern Illinois come into Nebraska and win before. It's not out of the realm of possibility. Yes, it's Nebraska's home opener, but you got to wonder what the mentality of this team's like right now. To be 0-2, to get the break speed off of you by Colorado. They need to find a way to win their next 2 games. And they're both winnable. I think it's against Northern Illinois and Louisiana Tech. Win their next 2 before they enter conference play, which they open up with against Michigan. How unfortunate. But this is a team, guys, that I would not be shocked to see Northern Illinois either beat Nebraska or play them very, very close, where everybody in Lincoln's going to go, here we go again. Matt Rule is going to be Scott Frost 2.0. I don't believe that's the case. I believe he's going to go through a rough patch, but I think Matt Rule is going to pan out. He's a program builder, and we know that. He struggled mightily that first year at Temple, built them up. Struggled mightily at Baylor, built them up. He's going to do the same at Nebraska. But watch out for this game on Saturday. And then the other one that I do want to mention briefly is Washington at Michigan State. Now, here's the thing. I mentioned it a second ago with Michigan State. They don't have much at all, right? They're not that good of a team. They beat Central Michigan, who's garbage, has one of the worst secondaries in the country, and they beat Richmond. And now they've obviously got all that stuff going on with Mel Tucker where people are concerned, right? He's suspended without pay right now. They're investigating all that BS that is going to result in him getting fired, bottom line. It's just a formality, what they're doing and how they're handling the situation. But Mel Tucker will not coach another game at Michigan State and very well might not coach another game in college football, period. But there's something to be said. A lot of the times you see teams that when they go through a trial like this, when they face something difficult, like a coach getting fired midseason or some scandal going on, they seem to unite behind the interim coach. They seem to play better with the newfound energy behind the interim coach. So don't be surprised that if in the first quarter, Michigan State is playing Washington very, very close. Maybe they're winning at the end of the first quarter. And it's one of those things where Washington enters as a roughly 16-point favorite, give or take. And if they find themselves in a close battle with Michigan State later in the second half, that is going to continue to fuel and give more hope to the Spartans, who have home field advantage. And everybody knows they're not expected to win this game against this top 10 opponent, against one of the best offenses in the country. But the longer you let them hang around, the more they believe they can pull it off. And they probably will if you let them hang around too long. For what it's worth, I don't think it happens. I think Washington wins this game, and I think they win it very comfortably. But do not be surprised if Michigan State plays Washington very, very close, and maybe pulls off a massive upset because the offense hasn't looked too bad. Noah Kim has been pretty solid under center. And again, there's something to be said for the extra sense of motivation and extra pride, something to prove when something catastrophic hits your program, just like we're seeing with the Mel Tucker issue. So those are really the only two potential upset alerts that we're going to call this week because, as we mentioned, the rest of the slate as either single-digit spreads or the double-digit spreads are so massive that the other team does not have a shot to win outright. Like we mentioned, Boston College will not beat Florida State. South Florida will not beat Alabama. Those Central Michigan will not beat Notre Dame. Those are all teams that are favored by at least 25 points or more, and we're just not putting them on upset alert. It's just not happening. So this week, again, kind of lackluster on upset alert, kind of lackluster on the slate itself. But next week, going to be a big, big payoff. You don't want to miss next week's live stream. I can tell you that. With all the massive games we got coming forward, we're going to be taking your calls. We're going to be talking about some of the big games. It's going to be a really, really fun night because week 4 is going to be even better than week 2. It might go down as the best weekend of college football all season long. Real quick, Lance 44. Can Georgia Southern give Wisconsin a game? They can. Yeah, they definitely can. I like Davis Brin a lot. He can really sling it at Georgia Southern. I think Clay Helton's doing a phenomenal job there for what it's worth. This is a Georgia Southern team, if you remember last year, did beat Nebraska on the road, so they're no stranger to playing in the Big Ten hostile environment and have a coach and a team that believes they can win at just about anywhere. Having said that, I do think Wisconsin wins this game. I think they win it by at least probably 10 to 14 points, maybe a little bit more. It'll be interesting to see how Wisconsin bounces back following that heartbreaker to Washington State. So I think Georgia Southern hangs around for a little bit. They have the offense to hit them, but yeah, not Wisconsin wins. Wisconsin wins pretty good. But this game's close at halftime. I'll say that. Wisconsin struggled against Buffalo in week 1. I think you're going to kind of see a similar game where Wisconsin struggles out the gate and then pulls away late, would be my guess, Lance. Extra analysis, though, Lance. Expert picks. You may have signed up for those. I don't know everybody's tags on YouTube, so I don't know the actual names. Shout out to Ty, man. Ty, we appreciate you. Thank you very much for that super chat. again, every little bit counts. We really do appreciate that, Ty. Good to see you as well. It's been a minute. I'm pulling it up right now to answer your question. I can't remember where those games are. I think they have to go to Oregon. They host USC. Yeah. So Colorado goes to Oregon, and then they host USC. Ty, I'm going to tell you that I think they've got a better chance of beating USC than they do Oregon for a couple different reasons. Oregon is more complete of a team than USC. Oregon's got a great offense. Colorado's got a great offense, but at least Oregon's got a defense. At least they've got that going for them. Colorado doesn't have that. USC, on the other hand, that's going to be a shootout. USC's offense with Caleb Williams, Colorado's offense with Shadur Sanders, it's going to be in Boulder. It's going to be rocking. Even if Colorado loses to Oregon and they're 3-1, because they're going to be Colorado State, they're probably still going to be a top 25 team. Boulder's going to be like on fire. They're going to be so pumped for that game, and neither team's going to be able to stop the other. And that, to me, really benefits Colorado because their offense can match USC. There's not many teams in the country that can match the Trojans offensively. Unfortunately for USC, the majority of the teams that can match them offensively reside in their own conference. It's Washington, it's Colorado, it's Oregon. So that's a big one. That's a big one. So I think, with home field advantage on their side, with the offense that can hang with USC's, and maybe a defense that steps it up just a little bit, I think they've got a better chance of beating USC than they do Oregon and Eugene. Fantastic question. And that's really going to give us a great look at what Colorado is made of. Like, we're hyping them up right now. They're a top 20 team. They're going to be top 20 going into the Oregon game, so they'll beat Colorado State. So they're 3-0. Everybody's hyped. And then it's time for reality to set in. Will they beat Oregon and USC? Will they beat one of them? Or will they get absolutely demolished by both of these programs? And people are going to go, okay, Colorado just beat up on some weaker opponents, such as a TCU team that lost a lot of talent, a Nebraska team that's no good and can commit turnovers left and right, and then Colorado State. Having said that, I still think Colorado could make a bowl game. They can beat Arizona State. They can beat Stanford. They can beat Arizona. They can maybe even hang with Oregon State. They get to host them in Boulder. But those first two conference games against Oregon and USC will be very, very telling for sure. So, Ty, thank you very much, man. Great, excellent question. And thank you again for that super chat. I really appreciate it. Let's see here. Let's see. I like that one from Glassman. Do I think Notre Dame should watch out for the back-to-back road games at Duke and Louisville? Yeah, they really should. I think Notre Dame beat Central Michigan now, obviously. Then they got Ohio State, which is massive. And that's where the trap game gets set up. I think they played Duke after Ohio State, right? Isn't that what happens? Double check that. Yeah. So they play Ohio State, and they get Duke on the road, and we seen what Duke's capable of. So it's like you beat Ohio State, you're riding the high, and Duke pops you in the mouth, or you lose to Ohio State, you're down on yourself, and Duke pops you in the mouth. Like, I'm not saying Notre Dame's losing to Duke at all right now. We'll cover that game when we get there in a couple of weeks. But, yeah, that's a major, major concern is that Notre Dame has to be very, very careful of not having an Ohio State hangover one way or another, win or lose, and then going into a very, very good Duke team. A Duke team that when they play on September 30th probably will be undefeated because they should beat Northwestern and they should beat UConn. So we'll be 4-0. We'll be a top 20 team. And you thought they were rocking for the Clemson game a few weeks ago. They're going to be rocking even more for Notre Dame. So watch out for that one. Yeah. And then Louisville's no slouch either. So, yeah, those two games will be telling. And really, really, honestly, after Central Michigan, you're going to get to see a lot of what Notre Dame's made of. 4 straight games against Ohio State, Duke, Louisville, and USC. The two big ones, Ohio State and USC, are in South Bend, which is great, but it won't matter much if they lose to Duke and Louisville or one of them. So definitely something to watch out for. Stimpy Bateman, does Duke cover against Northwestern? Does Duke cover against Northwestern? I tell you what, Stimpy and Lance and everybody else that has big questions about spreads and things like that, go sign up for those expert picks. It's ticking across the bottom right now. The link for it is in the description, thegridironexpert.com. Sign up for it. We'll tell you if Duke will cover or not. We'll tell you why we believe they do or don't. We'll tell you why Liberty is only a 3.5-point favorite, and if we're taking them or not. We will tell you everything you need to know. We'll give you winners if you go sign up over there. We beat out 80% of the national handicappers each of the last 5 years. We beat them out each of the last 5 years. We went 8-2 last week against the spread. We are 5-1 this week or this year on our best bets. We hit over 62% of our bets last year. Like, we are racking up winners left and right, and all of the money that we get from the expert picks goes right back into the channel and helps us get one step closer to reaching that 24-hour live stream goal. So it's definitely something to look into. Majorly. We'll hook you up. I promise you that. Guaranteed winnings, guaranteed profit, and the best customer service and insight that any handicapper in the country is going to give you to Stimpy and Lance. I can promise you that. Promise you that. You're not going to get this type of stuff from anybody else. Any other website, any other analyst, ain't happening. Ain't happening. So go check it out. thegridironexpert.com. Links in the description. We'd love to have you guys sign up on our team this year, and it is a full year-long subscription. So you buy now, you get it all the way through, what is today? September 12th of next year. It's a pretty damn good deal, if I say so myself, especially considering the price and the winnings that we give you. That goes for everybody, so go check it out. Last few things we wrap it up tonight. And Stimpy and Lance, we appreciate both of you guys. Hope you guys sign up with us. I hope you guys join our team. But regardless, we appreciate you guys being here and appreciate your support. Last two, I want to talk on Dalton's, and then I want to answer college football guys' points from earlier, and then we'll wrap things up here. Should you be worried about Tennessee playing Florida this week? Yeah, you should, but I think you're going to win. You should be worried, but I think you're going to win. I wouldn't be too worried about how they played against Austin Peay. It was concerning. It wasn't impressive, but I think Tennessee was kind of sleepwalking through that game. They knew they were going to beat Austin Peay even if they played their C game, right? Like, not even their A game or B game, their C game. They knew they'd win that, and they did. They were kind of looking ahead a little bit to Florida. They knew they could sleepwalk and still get the win. And they also didn't want to open up their entire playbook. You know, you hear stuff all the time about teams that don't open up the full playbook until they hit conference play, until they have that one big game. And I think Tennessee was holding some stuff back. And I think they're going to kind of let it unleash against Florida. You should be worried because historically you haven't played well there. You've lost 9 straight games in Gainesville, have not won there since 2003, which is a bit of a concern. But I still have major questions about Florida's offensive line. I think Tennessee's defense actually might exploit that quite a bit. Pressure Graham Mertz, a guy that I really don't have faith in delivering in the clutch. And the Florida defense isn't bad by any means, but I think the Tennessee offense can wear them down. So I wouldn't stress too much. Everybody has bad games. No one really looked good in week 2, for being honest. There really weren't many teams that looked super good against some inferior opponents in week 2. So I wouldn't stress that Austin Peay game too much, but Florida definitely is a tricky game just because of the historical aspect and the atmosphere. If the game was in Neyland and Knoxville, Tennessee all day. Putting it in Gainesville definitely puts a little wrinkle in that. Still think they win, though. So, college football guy, real quick, you had a couple questions, a couple of comments from your call earlier. We'll make sure we hit those for you. You mentioned Texas. First off, Texas looks phenomenal, and you kind of mentioned how they might be the best team in the Big 12, obviously. But could they make the playoff? Are they legit playoff contenders? And I think they are. I really do. If you look at the schedule, as we mentioned earlier in the show, it's pretty straightforward. It's a pretty easy course to an 11-1 or undefeated season, possibly. They got over one of the biggest tests of the year in Tuscaloosa. And now the other bigger tests of the year all reside in Austin or in Dallas, all within the state of Texas. Kansas State comes to them. TCU is in Texas. They have to go on the road, but it's in the state. Texas Tech goes to them, and then they play Oklahoma and Dallas. So, like, they are in a very, very good shape. So I love this Texas team. I love what they're doing. We had them at 10-2, so obviously we were very high on them. But we were obviously very high on them. But now, looking at it, we had them at 10-2 with the loss to Alabama. Now they've got that. Technically, we have them at 11-1 now, which means they're a win away from the Big 12 championship from going to the playoffs. So that's number one. You talked about Alabama. Are they on the downhill slope? Are they struggling? Yeah, they are. They're in a tough spot right now. Alabama's got a tough schedule coming up. They've got Ole Miss on the deck after USF, who will cruise by. It's a good bounce back game for Alabama, but then it gets hard. Ole Miss on the road at A&M, LSU, Arkansas, not going to be a slouch. And Tennessee as well, which they get to host. So some big games in Bryant-Denny Stadium, which is no longer invincible, no longer unbreakable. But you got to hope if you're Alabama, your playoff hopes aren't done. Your SEC title hopes aren't done. They will be with your next loss. And as Christopher Simmons, our good man, a good Bama fan knows, I mean, he believes they can do it. I believe they can do it. If any coach can do it, it is Alabama. It is Nick Saban. But the road there is very, very tough. You mentioned Miami as well, college football guy. And I know our man Mark is probably going to love this. Miami looks really, really good. I love what they're doing. Tyler Van Dyke looks like a completely different guy after what we saw last year. I know he was up and down with injuries and things like that, but he looks very, very solid. And I love the fight and the enthusiasm and the energy and the effort that we saw out of Miami against Texas A&M. And you can sit there all you want and say that A&M's not that good and that they're overrated, to which I would say, yes, you are correct. They are wildly overrated. But to still win a game over a top 25 team by double digits in a stadium that wasn't even completely full because no one shows up to Miami games for some reason, is still pretty dang impressive to me. Still very impressive. And I think that helped Miami start turning a corner. They could make the ACC championship this year. Clemson does not look like the team that we thought they would be or nor they should be. Florida State is the clear-cut favorite in that conference right now. Then you've got just a bunch of other people that are in the running. North Carolina's in there. Miami's in there. Clemson's still in there. Although if they lose to Florida State next week, they'll be done because that'll be 2 conference losses. You can't sleep on Duke. So Duke, North Carolina, Miami, all legitimate contenders to be that number two team and meet Florida State in the ACC championship game. And again, Clemson's in there. If they upset Florida State, all bets are off. But yeah, Miami is and how awesome would that be, right? I know they're going to play in the regular season, but imagine having a Florida State-Miami ACC championship game. Talk about a rivalry renewed. I mean, it's still going. I mean, it's still intense. But if you thought the regular season meetings were intense, imagine what the stakes would be and how intense it would be in an ACC championship where both teams are maybe fighting for a playoff spot, or at the least one of them is fighting for a playoff spot, and the other team has an opportunity to play spoiler. That would be awesome. And then finally, I agree with you. The Pac-12 is the best conference in all of college football right now, no doubt about it. They are phenomenal, have 8 teams in the AP poll, 4 teams that I believe are legitimate college football playoff contenders in USC, Oregon, Washington, and Utah. But dark horses in there as well, such as Oregon State and UCLA, teams that can make a run. Throw Colorado in there if you want, but to me, they're not playoff contenders. They will slip up multiple times this year when they start playing very good opponents, such as those first 2 games, like we mentioned, against Oregon and USC. But the Pac-12 is absolutely phenomenal. What a way to go out in their last year of existence. The SEC, on the other hand, you could argue is the worst conference in the country. I would argue that the Big 12 currently is the worst conference in the country. Both are very, very wide open conferences. Big 12 just doesn't look great. Texas is the best. Outside of that, who you got? Baylor 0-2, not really meeting expectations. Texas Tech 0-2, not meeting expectations. BYU isn't going to contend for a title. Houston will not contend for a title. They just lost to Rice. I mean, come on, man. So Houston, no. BYU, no. Cincinnati, 2-0. Good for them with the win over Pittsburgh. They are not legitimate contenders. UCF, big win over Boise State, now has an injury to John Rice Plumlee. We don't know how long he'll be out. So, Oklahoma's still in the mix, sure. Texas Tech can definitely bounce back, sure. Kansas looks great. Kansas State looks good. Iowa State, maybe. But I would argue that the Big 12 is maybe on a worse, spot than the SEC. But without a doubt, Pac-12 owning the number 1 spot. So there's that. Wrap that up for you. Great questions and great comments. Should Michigan be worried for Penn State? More worried for Penn State or Ohio State? Probably Penn State. Penn State, because they got to go to Happy Valley. They get to host Ohio State, and they've proven they can beat Ohio State. But typically, the home team between Penn State and Michigan typically gets the win. And the way Penn State's playing, that might be the toughest test for Michigan all year long, and they've got to do it in Happy Valley, one of the most difficult places to play in the country. And last question here from Ben Wyndham. Good to see you, Ben. Do I think Billy Napier is on the hot seat if he loses to Tennessee and Kentucky? It's a tough call, because here's where Florida has put themselves in a tough spot. He's only in his 2nd year, but obviously Florida is one of those programs that expects to contend at a very high level every single year. Having back-to-back losing seasons like they have, maybe well on their way to a 3rd straight losing season, is not ideal. But Billy Napier has been killing it on the recruiting trail. And if they fire him, all those big recruits that he landed are probably going to leave and either go with him to wherever he goes to coach next or just decommit and go somewhere else. That's the problem. Not all of them, but a good amount of them. So if you're Florida, do you say, yeah, we had a rough year. You lose to Tennessee, you lose to Kentucky, you lose to Georgia, you lose a few other games, and we have another losing season. Or at the best, we go 6-6, and we go, but next year's when we have to break through with all these freshmen. Or do they go, you know what? We don't care. Clearly, you're not the guy. You couldn't win in 2 years. We don't believe you're going to be able to develop these guys you're recruiting. Get the heck out of here. What do? It puts Florida in a very, very tough spot. I do think he's on the hot seat. I already think he is on the hot seat. I don't think Florida fans were necessarily thrilled with the hire to begin with. Last year didn't improve their tone. This year, you open up against and play horrible against Utah. And then if they lose to Tennessee and Kentucky, you're definitely going to lose to Georgia. And you're probably going to lose to Florida State. I mean, right there, that is 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 5 losses already. And they're bound to get upset maybe one way or another and finish 5-7 or 6-6, maybe even worse. So, yeah, he's on the hot seat. He will be on the hot seat. And then Florida will have a decision to make. Do we throw away all these recruits and all the work that he's done? Or do we say year 3 is it? You have to show us massive improvement. If you don't, you're out. Let the recruits transfer with you. So, very, very good question. Very good question. Let's see here. Guess that'll wrap things up for tonight. I think we kind of have hit somewhat of a lull here. CWC Wawa, we'll call them that. I don't know. We did talk about Michigan State, Washington. Actually, if you go back, if you rewind, you'll see it. It pops up as a banner. It's going to look like this. It's going to look like that. That's not our pick, by the way. We're not picking that. We said that just could be an upset alert, possibly a possible upset. So if you rewind, you'll see that banner come up and you'll hear us talk about Washington and Michigan State for a little bit. So, yes, we did tonight, but we appreciate you coming in, even at the tail end. We appreciate you. On your way out for everybody tonight, if you haven't already, hit that like button. Hit that like button. Share the stream. Share the channel. Subscribe if you haven't. Help the channel grow. Every single one of you is a very, very massive part of our GE Nation. And Noah coming in at the last second with the save. Just as we wrap up, Noah, we appreciate you, my guy. Thank you so much. Thank you. I really, really appreciate it. Come back next week for sure. We'll be back every Tuesday at 7, man. Every Tuesday, 7 p.m. Central Time. We'll be right here. But thank you so much for the super chat. And, yeah, Aggies are disappointing. We'll touch more on them next week. I promise you. I got you. But definitely not the team I thought they would be. That UMass game was rough. I really thought they'd win that. But Noah, hope you're doing well, my man. Thank you again so much for the super chat. Thank you for being here. And we're still going to be pulling for your Aggies, man. We're just first year in the Conference USA, just go bowling. Get back to a bowl game. And despite the rough start, I genuinely think they will. I do. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you guys, everybody else, for being here and for all of your support. Lance44, we appreciate you. Thank you. Go check out those expert picks, my guy. I'm telling you, best investment you'll make this college football season. That goes for everybody. Dalton, Rowdy, Bush, thank you. Doggy, thank you. Our man DM, Matthew Hazelhorse, Noah, New Mexico Noah, as we know. Ben Wyndham, Jerry Turner, Austin Pruitt, C. Glassman, Stimpy Bateman. Same goes for you with those expert picks. Clement, my man Clement, we appreciate you. Eddie, Mitch, we're going to find you on Twitter. Don't worry, Mitch. We're going to hook you up. God, who else? C. Glassman, Paxton, Scotty B., the Baylor King, our man Mark, Michael, Christopher Simmons, Jerry Turner. Congrats again on the big Syracuse win. Our man Will Lou, Mark, again, going back through the chat to find everybody. Joshua, Robert, R1, John Paul Bacon. Heck of a name. I love it. And everybody else who we may have missed, we appreciate every single one of you, all of your support. You guys have a great rest of your night. We have more content coming out for you right back here tomorrow at the Gridiron Expert. And we'll see you back here again next Tuesday, 7 p.m. Central Time for our Week 4 live stream, getting geared up for one of the best weekends of the year. Have a great rest of your night, everybody. We'll see you next week.